Chapter 229. After that, Wang Ling teleported Wang Ming and the others to a warehouse in the central district, which currently had no one hiding inside. Furthermore, it happened to be in the middle of the poisonous fog, which was a pretty good location. After suffering Wang Ming's inhumane 10 subduing dragon slaps, Super Chin woke up from his coma. His face had been slapped so hard that there were red finger marks on both sides. "You're awake?" Wang Ming shook his hand. The slap had hurt a lot. Force was mutual, and a Foundation establishment cultivator's body hurt a lot more than an ordinary person's. "Air? Brother Air?" Super Chin realized that his saliva was dripping to the ground, and there seemed to be some traces left on Wang Ming's shoulder. He was so scared that he jumped up in a flurry. "Brother Air, I'm sorry. When a military training is over, give me your clothes. I'll wash them for you." "Forget it. It's just a set of clothes." Wang Ming waved his hand generously. Super Chin already had no recollection of what had happened before and during his coma. He only remembered having a very sweet dream. He had dreamed that he had won glory for the country in the Olympics. This had been his lifelong dream. But why on earth had he suddenly fallen asleep in the middle of the military training and had such a sweet dream? Super Chin scratched his head in distress and couldn't quite figure it out. Actually, this was one of the effects of Wang Ling's Great Purification spell. In addition to clearing the body of toxins, the Great Purification spell also had the effect of clearing distracting thoughts. When a person had no distracting thoughts, they would naturally sleep soundly. Sometimes, when Father Wang was annoyed with revising manuscripts at home, he would have Wang Ling cast the Great Purification spell on him to ensure that he got enough sleep. Wang Ming looked at Super Chin's puzzled expression and gave him the explanation he had prepared beforehand. "We were ambushed by a group of people just now, and you were hit by the dizzying fog, so you fainted. The matter has been resolved now." "Oh, I see." Super Chan was suddenly enlightened. Woof! There was the sound of a dog barking. Turning around, Super Chin looked down and saw Loopy Toad. "Loopy Toad? Why are you here too?" "Loopy Toad did a great job in counterattacking while you were unconscious," Wang Ming said as he rubbed Loopy Toad's soft dog head. Super Chan was so excited that he hugged Loopy Toad and kissed it. "Loopy Toad, you're so awesome." Loopy Toad, when he came back to his senses, he suddenly realized a problem. Only then did he realize that classmate Wang Ling had actually disappeared. After arranging for Wang Ming and the others to a relatively safe location, Wang Ling took action on his own. With someone else around, he couldn't completely let loose. The matter of the gate between worlds seemed to have come to an end, but the mastermind behind the scenes had yet to surface. Actually, Wang Ling had already more or less guessed who it was. He could count on his fingers the number of people in this world who had the ability to summon the gate between worlds. He had seen with his own eyes how the old devil had summoned a devil spirit in his fight with that young man from Immortal Mansion. This old devil had a lot of tricks up his sleeves and definitely had subdued more than one devil spirit before. If he sacrificed a bunch of devil spirits and converted them into demon energy to power the gate between worlds, it was entirely possible. So for Wang Ling, the key now was to find the old devil's location. But the devil's aura was too well hidden. On one hand, Wang Ling had to avoid being noticed by the students in the small world, and on the other hand, he also had to avoid alerting the headmaster and seniors in the conference room outside, which was quite difficult. Furthermore, Wang Ling had already made up his mind. When he found the old devil, he would use a method similar to boiling a frog in warm water to silently exhaust the old devil to death. Although Wang Ming had already blocked the old devil's signal, he wasn't sure if he really wouldn't be noticed by the people in the conference room. Sure enough, this slow death method was the best way to deal with this kind of crafty old devil. After making up his mind, Wang Ling turned around and walked out of the dark alley. But he had only taken a few steps when he paused, because he noticed a pair of eyes watching him from behind. Who was it? Wang Ling was a little surprised. He had already confirmed that there shouldn't be anyone nearby. "Not bad, not bad. You're very perceptive and more outstanding than most of the students here." Wang Ling turned his head slightly, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw an old man with a white hedgehog head gradually materialize a dozen or so meters behind him. The moment the old man appeared, the light talisman wrapped around his body like a scale armor was extinguished bit by bit and drifted into the air. This person had actually wrapped himself in the nomological power of the small world and had completely merged with the aura of the small world. In this state, it was impossible to detect him with normal spiritual senses. Wang Ling immediately sighed in his heart. He had miscalculated. Do you know who I am? The old man with the hedgehog head looked at Wang Ling with a smile. He was wearing a white exercise uniform with a red belt around his waist, and his clothes and belt fluttered gently in the breeze. Wang Ling felt like he was a grandmaster. As for his identity, when Wang Ling saw the huge E character on the right chest of this exercise uniform, he already felt a little powerless to ridicule him. Wang Ling really wanted to ask this old man whether he was from Master Rashi's sect or Master Shin's sect, but given the identity of this person, Wang Ling didn't ask in the end. As a result, the scene fell into silence after a while. It was still the old man with the hedgehog hair who broke the silence. Previously, I felt the aura of the gate between world and the small world, but when I entered here, the aura of the gate between worlds suddenly disappeared. Wang Ling, although I don't know what's going on, I think the person I'm looking for should still be in this small world. So I've been secretly observing the situation in this small world, and it didn't take long for me to find you. Looking at the uniform you're wearing, you should be a student of number 60 high school? The old man narrowed his eyes, and a strange ripple appeared in his pupils as he stared at Wang Ling. Your realm shouldn't be as simple as the foundation establishment stage, right? As soon as the old man said this, Wang Ling felt his scalp go numb. He had really been too careless. He had never expected the legendary General Yi to actually show up here. Was he going to be exposed? Wang Ling was silent and didn't choose to answer. You can't hide it from me. Seeing this, the old man stared at Wang Ling and smiled. You're actually at the Golden Core stage, right? Wang Ling. Seeing that Wang Ling wasn't speaking, the old man was even more certain of his speculation. You're only in grade 1, but you've already reached the Golden Core stage. Your future prospects are truly immeasurable. Wang Ling, the old man smiled. I think you're pretty good. How about it? Do you want to be my disciple? I want you. Wang Ling. Were all the old seniors these days so straightforward? Oh. Chapter 230. It actually wasn't hard to guess General Yi's identity. If it had been a normal student who was bluntly told by General Yi that he wanted to take them as a student, they would probably have already jumped for joy by now. But Wang Ling didn't immediately agree. Right now, continuing to remain silent was probably the best option. Actually, Wang Ling had thought before that it wouldn't be a bad idea to find a Shifu to cover up his identity. But General Yi was, in the end, an old senior in the circle, and also one of the 10 founding generals of Huaxiao Nation who had shaken the 4 cities. It would really be too eye-catching to be around such a person. All in all, Wang Ling summed up his encounter with General Yi this time as a mistake. He should have been more careful. However, with this old senior to side, Wang Ling's plan to go all out and look for the old devil was completely ruined. He absolutely couldn't expose his true strength. For the time being, he would wait and see what General Yi's next move would be. Wang Ling sighed helplessly in his heart as the background music of the helplessness of the immortal king rang out in his head. However, Wang Ling's silence didn't make the old man in front of him feel the slightest bit disappointed. Instead, it piqued his interest even more. General Yi's eyes were fixed on Wang Ling, and there seemed to be light in them. Sure enough, I wasn't wrong about you. If a normal student heard that I was taking in a disciple, they would probably jump for joy, right? Wang Ling, General, you're very good. You've successfully attracted my attention. Wang Ling already didn't have the energy to ridicule this strong sense of a domineering CEO meeting the heroine of a romance novel. General Yi stepped forward and put one hand on Wang Ling's shoulder. I don't think you know me well enough. Do you want to make some big news with me and try to improve our relationship? Don't worry, it won't affect your chances in the survival contest, since I've taken a fancy to you. I'm going to give you some good luck. As long as you're willing to follow me, I promise you great luck, and you'll get chicken dinner tonight. It won't take up too much of your time." Wang Ling once again chose to remain silent. Now, what other choice did he have? General, he actually wasn't very tall, and actually looked about the same height as Jinka. In order to put his hand on Wang Ling's shoulder, his entire body floated up. Wang Ling was a little astonished. To be able to directly float in the air without the help of a magic artifact, he was already a true immortal. "I'm going to capture an old enemy. This time, I must capture him with my own hands." Saying that, General Yi looked in one direction and said lightly, "Guess where he's hiding?" As an old rival of Devil Emperor Wapai, it could be said that General Yi's understanding of the old devil was completely beyond Wang Ling's imagination. Based on what I know of him, given his character, if I can't detect his scent on the surface of the small world, then there's only one possibility left. General Yi looked deeply at the ground under his feet. 3 minutes later, he dug a pit in the ground with his bare hands that could accommodate at least 3 people. "General, I'm guessing he's definitely gone underground, and he's using a magic treasure to hide his aura." Wang Ling looked at the huge pit under his feet, a little puzzled in his eyes. So, why did he have to use his bare hands? This guy is very cautious. If he uses spirit talismans like the Earth Expansion spell, even the slightest fluctuation will immediately attract his attention. So at this time, choosing to use his bare hands is the best method. Saying that, General Yi jumped into the pit lightly. When he was done, he even waved at Wang Ling, who was outside the pit. "Come in. If you don't come in, how can I take you flying?" Wang Ling looked indifferently at the deep pit, but in the end still jumped in. After all, this was an invitation from an old senior, and it wasn't good for him to refuse. General Yi was famous, and to be honest, Wang Ling was quite nervous. Wang Ling felt that the key now was to stabilize the rhythm and do his best to behave like a junior and be a little more natural, unless it was absolutely necessary. Wang Ling really didn't want to directly knock this old senior out and then forcibly erase his memory. If a senior of this realm really did that, he would definitely give himself away. As soon as Wang Ling stepped into the pit, General Yi used a spell to fill it up. This completely turned the place into an enclosed space. Wang Ling was actually quite curious as to what this old senior was going to do next. General Yi's body rippled with spirit energy, and a wisp of protective immortal light lingered around him, completely illuminating the enclosed space. He carefully sensed the old devil's aura and smiled confidently. As I expected, this guy has been hiding underground. Furthermore, he's now planning to absorb the vitality of the thousands of students here to fill up his skeleton and rebuild his body so that he can resurrect himself. Wang Ling was a little surprised. It sounded like this was the old devil's private plan, but General Yi actually knew about it. "Are you wondering why I even know about this?" General Yi chuckled. Back then, this old man carelessly messed things up and sealed himself in the stone ghost mask. Although he managed to escape the strongest wave of arrest organized by the country at that time, he still managed to escape. Although he managed to escape the strongest wave of capture organized by the state at the time, he used the stone ghost mask to escape by accident. However, he would never have expected that the palm sword that I used to attack him at the end had a locator chip in it, which directly hit his soul. So all these years, I've been secretly monitoring his movements. Wang Ling, but unfortunately, the proposal to capture him had just been submitted to the higher-ups. This old guy was actually so savage that he directly attacked those 20 or so delivery riders first. Because of this, considering the corresponding danger to society, the capture was brought forward. General Yi continued, "I've already personally called the insurance department to deal with those innocent delivery riders quickly through the green channel and rebuild their bodies as soon as possible while their souls are still intact. As for the array that the old guy is preparing to absorb vitality, it was in fact impossible from start. The most important part of the array to absorb vitality and rebuild the body is the skeleton. That ancient almighty skeleton is in fact fake." Wang Ling, "General, When our Huaxiao Nation was founded back then, we were best at making knockoffs and imitations, the kind that could do anything. Wang Ling, so the skeleton that the old guy found is actually a high imitation that I specially prepared for him. When I took it out back then, I was almost criticized. General, he heaved a deep sigh. Do you know that crystal coffin in Huaxiao Nation's National Palace? Every year, the school should organize a group of people to worship this senior. In fact, the skeleton in the crystal coffin is a high imitation. The real skeleton has already been hidden. Crystal coffin? Wang Ling. The skeleton in this crystal coffin belonged to Huaxiao Nation's founding ancestor. General, looking at your expression, I'm sure you've already guessed it. I took the high imitation skeleton that the old guy is using now from the crystal coffin. Chapter 231. Wang Ling had thought that there weren't many things in the world that could shock him, but he was still taken aback by General Yi's words. Wang Ling was stupefied. He had always had a poker face since birth, but at that moment, he was genuinely shocked by General Yi to the point where he revealed a rare expression, and the corners of his mouth couldn't stop twitching. Was there such a thing? Even if the skeleton in the crystal coffin was an imitation, it was still an imitation of Huaxiao's founding ancestor. Would it really be okay to do this? At that moment, Wang Ling and the old man stood in the pit, the protective immortal light emitted by the old man illuminating the entire pit. Wang Ling could clearly see General Yi's calm expression. So, everything is for the sake of catching that old devil. He's found a body double and wants to leave the stone ghost mask. If he really succeeds in reconstructing his body, I'm afraid that Huaxiao Nation won't be peaceful anymore. Furthermore, there's all kinds of evidence that this devil still has remnants in the world, and they aren't weak. Wang Ling completely understood now. It turned out that this had been a trap from the very beginning. Because a monitoring chip had been inserted into the old devil's soul, he had wanted to cooperate with the master of Shadow Stream Jiang Luiyue, and a series of events that had unsealed the stone ghost mask to the current reconstruction of his physical body. General Yi actually knew all about it. What was even more frightening was that if General Yi had hidden the monitoring chip in the palm sore back then, this trap had actually been laid out 1,000 years ago. Wang Ling wasn't a gossipy person. Even if General Yi hadn't said anything, Wang Ling actually didn't care at all. The reason why he wanted to fix that old devil was entirely because the other party had disturbed his life. Not only that, it had also seriously delayed his studies. This was what Wang Ling couldn't stand the most. Of course, Wang Ling also understood very well why General Yi had told him so much. General Yi completely regarded him as one of his own. He wasn't joking when he said he wanted to take him in as a disciple. He was serious. Do you know who made that monitoring chip? It seemed like there was still some time before the final plan to pull in the net. So General Yi simply sat cross-legged on the ground with a very calm expression on his face. In our Huaxiao Nation's Cultivation Academy of Science, there is a youngster known as the strongest brain. This chip was developed according to his formula and could guarantee that it would not be detected by the devil. I'll introduce him to you if there's a chance next time. Wang Ling. General Yi looked at the time and realized that there was still plenty of time left. In a while, the operation to pull in the net will begin. This old man will make the first move to lure that devil out, and the rest of the 100 or so people will join forces to lay down the 5 elements grand array and capture that devil. Previously, the demon escaped because of the purple gold gourd. As long as we trap him in the array, he won't be able to escape even with the purple gold gourd. Wang Ling seemed to have learned of big news from these few words. No wonder there were more than 100 instructors entering the small world this time. It turned out that all of this was planned. Furthermore, judging from the old man's words, Wang Ling felt that the original purpose of the survival contest this time had probably been to attract the old devil. General Yi had long known that this devil wanted to absorb vitality to reconstruct his body. This old guy is really slow now, but that turning array isn't easy to set up. General Yi sighed and was a little impatient from waiting. Then, he straightaway took out his phone and started to surf the internet. Wang Ling glanced at it and realized that it was a chat window. General E was using an account with the ID 9 times in one night to chat with someone else. Wait a minute, 9 times in one night? Wasn't this the 9 times man from that chat group? The 9 times man who had claimed to be a rookie in the chat group back then, and who had bought a fake sunflower manual online and been duped into buying it. Wang Ling found it a little inconceivable. He had never expected this 9 times man to actually be General E. This is a group I joined a few years ago, and it's pretty interesting, General E said as he scrolled through the screen. A lot of people think that us old guys in the cultivation circle are a bunch of aloof poker faces, but this old man has discovered a problem. In fact, as we get older, as our cultivation deepens, our playfulness also increases. Wang Ling, General, sometimes, if you create a smurf account to join this kind of chat group and communicate more with the juniors, you might reap unexpected rewards and even gain new enlightenment on the meaning of Tao. Wang Ling. Actually, Wang Ling's impression of the 9 times man in the group was that he had been a very lively and amusing person from the very beginning. Furthermore, General E himself was also an old urchin, so they were quite compatible in this aspect. However, General E was probably the only one who could disguise himself as a rookie and sneak into the chat group to chat with the juniors in the circle. This chat group had been created by Immortal Toya for some of the founding elders and star active users of the cultivation forum. It could be said that everyone in the group was a trusted aide. Immortal Toya had investigated the identities of those who could join the group behind their backs and verified the relevant information before letting them in. As one of the 10 founding generals of Huaxiao Nation, it was simply too easy for General E to forge an identity. After chatting for a while, General E began to talk to Wang Ling about some of the people in the chat group one by one. The group leader, grenade-throwing senior immortal, was actually the disciple of a good friend of mine back then. I didn't expect him to grow up so much in the blink of an eye. His chivalrous spirit, as well as his fondness for getting into a dead end when it comes to inexplicable things, he's in line with his Shifu. When General E said this, Wang Ling inexplicably thought of those broccoli that grenade-throwing senior immortal had been thinking about. Immortal Toya, a level 9 alchemist. Back in the Shao clan's alchemist competition, he single-handedly challenged the Shao clan's top 10 alchemists and returned victorious. General E seemed to know everyone's story very well. This junior's future is bright. This old man has always wanted to find an opportunity to meet him. So for this survival contest, I had Little Dakong recruit him to be the chief instructor. Wang Ling, Little Dakong. There's also the group manager, Salian Jinren. To be honest, she gave this old man a lot of inspiration in this operation to capture the old devil this time. But I'm still most interested in this person. Saying this, generally swiped the screen and finally locked onto one person in the list of group members. Chapter 232. In order to keep a low profile in the chat group, Wang Ling had chosen to use a very old-fashioned avatar. It was a man with a cigarette in his mouth and a black hat, with skin so white that it was more devilish than skin. The avatar even had a classical filter on it. Given the current development of the times, this was non-mainstream. Wang Ling sucked in a cold breath. He thought he had already kept a low profile, but never thought that he would still attract General Yi's attention. For the first time, Wang Ling felt that he had completely miscalculated. He had been on guard against so many people, but never had he thought that the person he should have been most wary of was right next to him. Moreover, General Yi's acuity could be said to have completely exceeded Wang Ling's imagination. The reason why this old man is interested in this person is purely because of his avatar. General E pinched his mustache and said, "There are a lot of friends in my circle of friends who like to disguise their identities to tease juniors. They all use similar methods, which is to choose a rather silly avatar and match it with a silly-sounding online name to hide their identity." Wang Ling, General, consider this old man's little common sense in life. When you go online in the future, never judge someone's identity based on their avatar and online name. Who knows, these people might be big shots behind the scenes. For example, I gave them a name before, Blooming Blossoms Big Brother's Posture. Wang Ling, If you meet someone who looks like a big shot, don't be in a hurry to curry favor with them, or it'll have the opposite effect. General E said very seriously. In this case, the most ideal method is to silently top up 10 yuan as a member first. After about 10 minutes, General Yi's incessant chatter finally subsided. Don't mind me being long-winded. This old man is teaching you modern cultivation communication skills. As long as you can grasp them firmly, ascending to immortality won't be a dream. General E said, like before, this old man knew of a junior, surnamed Song, who somehow managed to sneak into a cultivation chat group. In just 5 months, his realm advanced by leaps and bounds, and he was reborn. So this old man isn't making this up. It's all a case study. Wang Ling. At the end of the conversation, the underground space instantly fell silent. There was silence for a long time. In the end, it was General E who broke the silence. I can already sense that the devil can't hold back any longer, and the rotation array is about to be activated. After that, as long as we successfully activate the 5 elements formation, we will be able to ensure that this fiend can't escape with any other magical equipment. We will exhaust him like boiling a frog in warm water. Wang Ling was startled again. Boiling a frog in warm water. This general, he had actually thought of the same method of attacking the old devil as him. Previously, this old man made an agreement with 100 instructors in the outside world to throw a cup as a signal. As long as this old man throws a cup, as long as they hear it, they will immediately act at the same time. For some reason, General Yi's unperturbed face actually turned a little red at the mention of this cup-throwing operation, and he looked a little excited. Speaking of which, the inspiration for this cup-throwing operation was Tsalianjinren in that chat group. Wang Ling gazed at General E, deep in thought. All the plans now showed that the old devil had completely fallen into the trap. If General Yi's plan went smoothly, this devil who struck fear into the hearts of everyone in Huaxiao Nation would draw his last full stop today. However, would the plan really proceed smoothly? In the underground space on the other side, all the preparations for the activation of the array had already been completed. Now, as long as enough spirit energy was injected into the array to activate it, the body transformation spell would be able to activate the array smoothly. But it was at this last step that the old devil hesitated. Standing in front of the array, he cupped his chin in contemplation and didn't make a move. In the stone ghost mask, Jiang Luiyue asked, "What's wrong, Lord Devil Emperor?" The old devil couldn't help frowning. My venerable self feels that something isn't right. First of all, he realized that the gate between worlds hadn't descended smoothly. He had been concentrating on setting up the array earlier and hadn't been distracted by what was happening with the gate between worlds. The only thing the old devil could be sure of was that without the 10 founding generals working together to close the door in this small world, there was absolutely no one who could close the door on their own. So he attributed the situation with the gate between worlds to a lack of demon energy. But he had sacrificed 10 void refinement devil spirits before, so why wasn't this demon energy enough? The old devil was now very conflicted. Apart from this matter, everything was going too smoothly for him. From entering the small world, to opening up the underground space, to setting up the array, there hadn't been the slightest hindrance. You don't know, but my venerable self was actually tricked by my wife once before, and the situation back then was a little similar. At that time, my venerable self was preparing to organize the Guapai army to occupy Huaxiao's national palace. But I didn't expect that old man Yi Jianchuan to use an empty city stratagem on me, and my army was wiped out in an instant. The old devil frowned and said, "Actually, before attacking the city, my venerable self had already noticed some clues, and I was going to cancel the plan. But my foolish wife insisted that my venerable self go all out, and in the end, my venerable self was in a sorry state." Zhang Luiyue was also startled. "So Lord Devil Emperor thinks that this is a trap?" "Very likely." The old devil said, "Like the previous attack on the city, before we attacked the national palace, all the plans went smoothly. There wasn't the slightest hiccup, and it's actually the same this time. Apart from the slight accident with the gate between worlds, everything else has been going too smoothly. This is the small world that old man Yi Jianxuan has set up, and he knows my venerable self inside out. I've been in the small world for so long, but he actually didn't make the slightest move? And now that I think about it, it was a little too easy to obtain this skeleton, as if it had been prepared for my venerable self in advance. Jiang Luiwei. Could it be that Lord Devil Emperor is overthinking things? Gazing at the glowing ancient almighty skeleton in front of him, the old devil sighed slightly. I hope so, but those 100 or so people outside make me feel uneasy. If they join hands to set up a great array, even my venerable self will find it very difficult to escape. Jiang Luiwei shook her head. Junior feels that Lord Devil Emperor is overthinking things. Lord Devil Emperor is only one step away from being completely reborn. As long as you borrow this body to be reborn, who in this world can do anything to you? The old devil carefully considered Jiang Luiwei's words, and in the end nodded. That's true. Riches and honor come from danger. It looks like my venerable self is a little overcautious. As he spoke, the old devil's fingertips glowed with spirit light, and vigorous spirit energy spread out to envelop the skeleton. The body-turning array was thus activated. At the same time, in the underground space on the other end, General E almost instantly received the signal for the old devil's array to be activated. It's been more than 1,000 years. As expected, the mine-eye buried in the palm sword is the key to victory. By the way, have you heard of the Fate Stone Gate? General E sighed as he looked at Wang Ling. Wang Ling was astonished. He had read in ancient texts that this was a gate that could be used to freely travel back and forth and reset the timeline. Who would have thought that Huaxiao Nation would actually use this trump card to deal with the old devil? But Wang Ling also felt that it was a little strange, because legend had it that this Fate Stone Gate had been sealed by the founding ancestor of Huaxiao Nation a long time ago. In a situation where the founding ancestor wasn't around, how had the seal been broken? Back then, it took a lot of effort to send the surveillance chip on the devil back to the past. Speaking up to this point, General Yi's expression instantly turned serious. Wang Ling also frowned as he looked in one direction, where he sensed a strange fluctuation of spirit energy. Was it about to begin? Now it's time to smash the cup, and the final plan to draw in the net. General E narrowed his eyes, then stuck his right hand into his lapel to finally pull out a long string of pink bras, which he threw heavily on the ground. Wang Ling, what F** king smashing cup signal? So it was a bra. Wait a minute. Chapter 233. This long string of bras had been specially made by General E for this plan. When the bras fell to the ground, the minute fluctuations of spirit energy would instantly connect with the 100 or so instructors around them. It could only be said that General E was General E in the end. Wang Ling had to admit that even if he cultivated for another 100 years, he still wouldn't be able to catch up to him. A minute later, the instructors standing on the roofs of the small world received the signal at the same time. With Immortal Toya in the lead, they all started to lock onto the old devil's coordinates and set up the 5 elements great array. Coordinates locked. Array confirmed. Spirit energy reserves confirmed. Activate array. Up in a tall building, Immortal Toya sat with a solemn expression on his face as he gave instructions. Spirit energy surged out of the 100 or so drill instructors nearby at the last command, activate the array. Just like the turtle wave technique, spirit energy surged out of their palms. In a flash, 100 rays of light condensed into a 5-color magic ball above the confirmed coordinates. Then, the magic ball spread out to form a huge 6-pointed star array, which slowly covered the sky. This scene was really too spectacular. It was like watching fireworks at night, and was even more magnificent than the Shao family compound's heavenly flame fireworks party. One by one, the students from his 6 schools stopped in their tracks. What was going on? Was the godly punishment circle coming? All of a sudden, the students felt a sense of panic. All of them stopped fighting and returned to the building. Wang Ling paused next to General Yi. The five elements great array was a type of array that had only been heard of in ancient books, but had never been set up by anyone with their own eyes. It was a powerful array that had only been set up 1,000 years ago, when the demon gods of the gate between worlds had invaded. Because it had a very strong restraining power, and because it consumed too much energy, it was specially used by almighties to deal with demon gods. The moment the five elements great array was activated, the old devil could already sense the fluctuations from far away underground. Sure enough, he had fallen into a trap. Furthermore, the old devil immediately realized that this was a trap set up by his old rival. Jianchuan, I knew you wouldn't let me off so easily. The old devil looked up at the sky and took a deep breath as he pondered the glowing skeleton in front of him. He should have realized earlier that there was something wrong with this skeleton. What's wrong, Lord Devil Emperor? Jiang Luiyue asked from the stone ghost mask. I've fallen into a trap. This ancient almighty skeleton is a replica, and replicas can't activate the turning array at all. The old devil looked up at the sky. Also, my venerable self can already smell the five elements great array. I've already set up an inescapable net outside. With the five elements great array here, even the purple gold gourd's fog won't be able to escape. Then what should we do now? Jiang Luiyue had never expected things to turn out this way. The only thing we can do now is to go all out. The old devil sighed and broke out of the ground with the stone ghost mask. He could already sense two familiar auras slowly approaching him from afar. Even though it had been 1,000 years since they last met, it was still a familiar scent. The old devil narrowed his eyes and then suddenly realized a problem. Wait a minute. Why were there two familiar auras? This aura belongs to Jianchuan, the other one. Then the old devil saw an old man and a youngster appear in the distance as they slowly walked toward him. Looking at the youngster, the old devil broke out in a cold sweat. Who could tell him why Killer Taoist would appear in such a place? And wearing a F*** King School uniform. The five-colored halo of the five elements great array shrouded the ground in a hazy haze, and the ground was shrouded in a layer of mist, which made it look like a fairyland. Behind General Yi, Wang Ling stood face to face with the old devil. General Yi took the initiative to shield Wang Ling behind him and wrapped him in a seemingly superfluous protective immortal light, which instead made Wang Ling feel a little uncomfortable. This protective immortal light wasn't even half as strong as the protective golden light of his sage body. In fact, when he had read about the grudge between General Yi and the old devil in the history books, he had actually wondered what it would be like if these two old rivals, who had crossed 1,000 years, met again one day. In the end, this collision wasn't as intense as he had imagined. The five elements great array had already been set up, and the old devil knew that he was doomed. Given his current body, which wasn't at its peak, he didn't have the strength to fight General Yi at all. And the most frightening thing was that the junior who had thwarted his plans twice was actually following behind his old rival. At that moment, the old devil felt a little hopeless. This old man has always been very curious about how you will retaliate against me when you reappear in this world. I never thought that when we meet again, you would actually be in a woman's body. General, he looked at the old devil lightly. Surrender and come back with me. You have no chance of winning. The old devil grit his teeth and stared at the old man. Old E, my venerable self asks you, what's your relationship with the junior behind you? Him? General E laughed. He stood on his tiptoes and floated in the air as he reached out to rub Wang Ling's head. This is the new disciple I plan to take in. Don't you think he has a good aptitude? Wang Ling, the old devil. You want to take him as a disciple? That's right. He's already at the golden core stage at such a young age. With this kind of talent, I'm really looking forward to his future realms. General, he looked at Wang Ling with a kind smile. After hearing this, the old devil was speechless for a very long time. Not long ago, the old devil had seen Wang Ling effortlessly block the immortal mansion youngster's golden crescent moon, and he had already come to a conclusion in his heart. This youngster's strength was unfathomable. Even if the old devil had recovered to his peak condition, the odds would at most be 50-50. So after hearing General Yi's words, the old devil deeply felt that his old adversary seemed to have misunderstood this junior's understanding of him. The old devil took a deep breath, looked at Wang Ling first, and then finally turned his gaze back to the hedgehog head elder in front of the youngster. "Oldie, are you sure you don't want to reconsider?" It was obvious that the old man was a little puzzled by this baffling question. "What does it have to do with you which disciple I take in? Or do you want to harm my disciple?" The old devil didn't say anything as he quietly swept his gaze over Wang Ling. He saw Wang Ling take a few steps back, and it was clear that he didn't want to get involved in the grudge between the two of them. In the end, the old devil just pursed his lips and simply swallowed everything that had happened between him and Wang Ling. The old devil sighed. He knew that now that things had come to this, there was no point in saying anything more, even though he knew that he had no chance of winning this fight. But as a devil emperor, even at the last moment, the old devil still held on to his dignity. Chapter 234. This was supposed to be an unprecedented showdown that spanned 1,000 years and would go down in the annals of history, but no one expected it to unfold like this. The five elements' great array's hexagram array imprisoned the old devil, and the heart of the small world was shrouded in a multicolored haze. In the conference room outside, Secretary Dukong, Ajwa, the headmasters of the 6 schools, as well as the students hiding in the buildings, were all witnesses to this showdown. Of course, neither the old secretary nor the headmasters of the 6 schools chose to intervene, as they were well aware of the grudge between these two people. This showdown was easier than Wang Ling had imagined. Standing in the distance, he saw a dim sword light emerge from General Yi's palm. This was General Yi's famous consummate skill, palm sword. Back then, it was this final palm sword that had directly struck the old devil's vitals and sent the monitoring chip, which Wang Ming had invented 1,000 years later, into the old devil's soul. "Oldie, your palm sword really makes my venerable self miss it," the old devil sneered. Now that things had come to this, he already had nothing to fear. A mist of blood and purple chi dispersed from his palm, which finally condensed into several purple-black magic balls that lingered between his fingers. The Chaos Ball was the old devil's famous skill. Neither of these two people's famous skills were the kind of domineering and cool great spells with flying special effects that filled the sky. Instead, they were spells that could be condensed at will and launched a timely attack. In fact, the palm sword and the Chaos Ball were very similar in nature. They weren't special effects spells, but the kind that had powerful destructive power with a small light effect. However, although these two spells seemed easy, not everyone could learn them. To compress such a high density of spiritual energy into the palm and fingers required extremely precise manipulation techniques and terrifying concentration. At that moment, both of them had used their famous skills, but the outcome had already been decided. Confined by the 5 elements' great array, and before he had recovered to his peak condition, the strength that the old devil could exert was really too limited. General Yi didn't use his full strength, because he didn't need to overstep his bounds. In this case, even if he only used 50% of his strength, it would be enough to take down this devil. After condensing their famous skills, the two people stared at each other for a moment. A minute later, General Yi was the first to act. The palm sword in his hand slashed through the air, and the sky immediately changed color. A formless wave spread out from the air, and everyone within a radius of 100 miles could feel it. This wave had already spread to the ends of this small world. This white figure dressed in kung fu attire was advancing in his direction. Under the situation that their realms were not equal to each other, and under the confinement of the 5 elements formation, his eyes could not catch up at all. All he could rely on now was his intuition. After exchanging blows with General Yi several times in the past, the two of them had a certain level of understanding of each other's attack patterns. The old devil raised his hand and blocked the blow with great effort. When the palm sword collided with the Chaos Ball, there was a huge boom, and the powerful vibration directly caused the old devil to spit out a mouthful of blood. In the end, he managed to block the attack, but he suffered 800 casualties. The fluctuation of the palm sword pierced into his body like an electric current, shaking his internal organs so much that they spasmed. His knees trembled nonstop, and he gritted his teeth, doing his best not to kneel down. Blood seeped out of the old devil's front teeth and stained his mouth red. At that moment, even though the old devil was draped in Jiang Liuyue's body, it was as if everyone could see the old devil's figure from the past. He had always been someone who refused to admit defeat. No matter how serious his injuries were, he was unwilling to fall and would stubbornly stand on his feet. After crossing swords 1,000 years ago, in just one collision, the old devil had already lost all ability to fight. General Yi's palm sword also dispersed, and he no longer condensed it. He slowly walked up to the old devil and looked at him. "You've always been like this. Back then, if you had confessed to your crimes earlier, your proudest disciple, Immortal Shi Pai, wouldn't have been executed under Leifeng Pagoda after being struck by lightning for 10 years. My venerable self just wanted to find her. What crime?" The old devil clutched his chest and sneered. Resurrection goes against the laws of heavenly Tao. Going against the laws of heaven will never end well. General, he narrowed his eyes. And you should be well aware that there is no true way to resurrect someone in this world. Of course, my venerable self knows that. The old devil roared. That's why my venerable self hopes to find her reincarnation. I heard that the Wheel of Time in the National Palace works and can find a specific person's reincarnation. Hearing this, General Yi was stupefied. So, the reason why the Guapai army attacked the National Palace 1,000 years ago wasn't to rebel, but for the sake of the Wheel of Time? Rebel? I don't have that ability. The old devil smiled bitterly. The Wheel of Time was my venerable self's real goal. At that time, she was already on the verge of death, so my venerable self could only fight for her. Unfortunately, when I broke in, the National Palace was empty, and I knew then that I had fallen into a trap. The old devil's explanation made everyone inside and outside the small world fall silent. After a long time, General Yi took a deep breath. "So, you did all this for your wife. What else?" The old devil rolled his eyes. Hearing this, the faces of the headmasters outside the small world and Secretary Dakong couldn't help twitching. This pack of dog food had really caught them off guard. Seeing the speechless expression on the old man's face, the old devil asked suspiciously, "Don't tell me that the Wheel of Time actually doesn't exist." "No, don't worry about that. The Wheel of Time does indeed exist." The corners of General Yi's mouth couldn't help twitching. What I want to say is, although it's a forbidden weapon, if there are special circumstances, you can submit a report and apply to use it. The old devil, Wang Ling. Of course, this process is very troublesome. General Yi was silent for a while before he said, "But given your realm at your peak and your status in the cultivation circle before you organized the Guapai army, as long as you made a few more meritorious deeds for the country, it would be completely possible for you to apply to use it." The old devil. At this point, the scene fell silent. After 1,000 years of fighting, in the end, they had shot themselves in the foot. No matter who it was, they wouldn't feel good about this outcome. Resting his hands on his knees, the old devil smiled bitterly, and there was a hint of sadness in his laughter, as if fate were toying with him. General Yi looked at him and said very indifferently, "If you agree to leave with me for interrogation and kneel down to beg me, this old man can make the decision for you and help you drive the Wheel of Time to find her reincarnation. I beg you." The old devil stared at General Yi with a burning gaze. He didn't kneel down, but he didn't hesitate in the slightest when he spoke. Chapter 235. For a very long time, General Yi was silent. He saw that the old devil's knees were trembling, and he wouldn't kneel no matter what. This was a stubborn man who refused to kneel even though he had suffered a very serious internal injury. Even though the old devil had done a lot of wrong things, as his opponent for 1,000 years, General, he had to admit that he was indeed a respectable man. Can't you change that stubborn donkey temper of yours? General, he looked at the old devil and sighed deeply. Forget it, now that things have come to this. If you're willing to come back with me to stand trial. If you don't want to kneel, it's fine. The old devil raised his eyes, and they lit up. Really? Before you are punished, this old man will investigate her reincarnation for you. Since this is my promise to you, I will naturally fulfill it. But, General, he lowered his eyes slightly, his dark pupils bottomless. There was a flash of spirit light in his hand, and a pair of crystal handcuffs appeared. You have to put these on. The moment the handcuffs appeared, Wang Ling's eyes flashed slightly, because he could sense that they contained the same material as the talisman seal on his arm. Wang Ming had once told him that this material came from an extraterrestrial or meteorite and was very difficult to refine. Even if you used the most sophisticated equipment to repeatedly extract it, you would only be able to extract a few micrograms after several years. This mysterious material in the talisman seal played a very important role in suppressing Wang Ling's aura. I remember that there are only 2 of these in the whole country. In order to deal with my venerable self, you used the 5 elements great array and the spirit shackles. You really went through a lot of trouble. The old devil took the handcuffs and smiled bitterly. He put them on without hesitation, so straightforwardly that General, he found it a little hard to believe. General, he smiled slightly. I thought you would refuse. The old devil. In this situation, it's useless for my venerable self to struggle. I might as well be a little more refreshed in order to see my silly wife's reincarnation as soon as possible. General, I couldn't tell that you were actually so infatuated, the old devil said. Just now, your palm sword hurt me. Sword chi surged in my body, and my venerable self used spirit energy to resist it, which directly paralyzed my peripheral nerves and froze my legs. Hearing this, the corners of General Yi's mouth twitched fiercely. So this was the real reason why you didn't kneel. The 5 elements great array, which had been used to resist the invasion of the demon gods from the gate between worlds back then, and this spirit shackles could be said to have been used to capture the old devil this time. As the chief planner of this operation, General E had already given it his all. June 15th, the 8th Wednesday of the semester. On this day, during the joint military training exercise organized by the 6 schools, the old devil was put on the spirit shackles and arrested. This was definitely a historic moment. After the old devil put on the spirit shackles, General E seized all the magic treasures he had hidden in the chaotic space, including the purple gold gourd which had helped the old devil escape so many times. Many of the magic treasures taken out of the chaotic space had been forcibly seized by the old devil when he had attacked the museum. These magic treasures were taken out one by one. There were a total of 20 to 30 of them, and each of them had a shocking origin. The Tai Chi disc, the Book of 9 Emperors, the Treasure Tree, the Investiture Cauldron, the Chaos Flag, the Sky-Turning Seal. These were all genuine top-notch holy weapons, and they glowed when they were placed on the ground. Wang Ling sized them up from behind General E and was startled by what he saw. Fortunately, the old devil hadn't fully recovered and didn't have the magic energy to operate these holy weapons. Otherwise, in a one-on-one fight, the number of trump cards he had would be terrifying. In addition to the 6 top-notch holy weapons, General E also discovered many world-famous special magic weapons. Because of their own particularities, these magic weapons weren't included in the orthodox ranking of magic weapons. Like some evil god figurines, they belonged to the category of problematic magic weapons. At the same time, they had side effects and terrifying abilities that weren't inferior to holy weapons. General E looked through them one by one. Among these many special magic weapons, he actually found a few that he didn't recognize. He found a dark gold magic bell with a golden lotus on it. The most amazing thing was that when these 2 magic weapons touched each other, they actually burst out with endless green light. General E looked at the old devil in astonishment. What's this? Wearing the spirit shackles, The old devil identified them. Oh, these are the golden climbing lotus and shimanshing. If you're exposed to that green light for 2 minutes, it can make a person shorter. General Wang Ling, then General E pointed to a glowing pad and asked, "All right, then what's this? Period pad? I never thought you'd have this kind of hobby. Don't tell me you've changed sex after possessing a woman's body?" The old devil. This is the sky mending towel, which is used to mend space cracks. Given my current body, I can't freely travel through space without this sky mending towel. General E had thought that the magic weapons he had invented were already strange enough, but he never thought that there would be someone who was even stronger than him. General E couldn't help sighing with emotion. Sure enough, he still had room to improve on the path of inventing magic weapons. Wang Ling, while General E was taking inventory of the magic weapons, Immortal Toya also came over to his side and smiled as he congratulated him from the bottom of his heart. General Yi's palm sword is like a thunderclap to my ears. This junior is truly blessed to be able to see it today. That's easy. If you want to see it again next time, send me a WeChat message and I'll cut you a fruit. General E waved his hand generously. Immortal Toya, by the way, the 5 elements great array caused quite a ruckus. Are the students all right? General E asked with some concern. During the confrontation just now, the survival contest was suspended. I've already told the students to hide in the buildings through the electronic handbook. Currently, there are more than 8,000 people left. Immortal Toya answered truthfully. That's good. After I bring this devil out for interrogation, the competition can continue as normal. General E nodded, then turned his gaze to Wang Ling. Oh, by the way, let me tell you first, this number 60 high kid has a very good route. I intend to train him as a disciple. Immortal Toya felt that he was very far away, but he could already sense the bitterness in Wang Ling's eyes. He felt that he should excuse Ling Zhenren. General, this can't be done. General Yi frowned. Why? Because in this crisis, Immortal Toya stepped forward, put his arm around Wang Ling's shoulder, and then abruptly pulled him toward his chest. He's mine. General E. After saying that, this handsome gray-haired man stealthily glanced at Wang Ling's expression out of the corner of his eye. Well. Chapter 236. Wang Ling knew that Immortal Toya was exonerating him, but this was also the first time a man had pulled him to his chest. When these two good-looking youngsters were together in this manner, Wang Ling instantly thought of a famous dish that mother one had once cooked. Curry Jew. General, he looked at Wang Ling with a little pity in his eyes. So he's already your disciple? Immortal Toya. Yes, senior. I took him in as my direct disciple a long time ago. This sounded very casual, but in fact, Immortal Toya had thought it over carefully. It wouldn't be good if he casually gave General E a specific time frame and gave General E a loophole. Thus, this sort of all-purpose phrase like a long time ago would often come in handy at times like this. Forget it. Since he's your disciple, it won't be good for this old man to rob him of his love. General E sighed. I just thought about it carefully. After this old devil comes back with me, I'll have to deal with a lot of things like interrogation and sentencing, so I won't be able to take care of this little student for the time being. You're also very strong, and your skill in alchemy has even surpassed that of the Shao clan, who started their career in alchemy. This little student should have good prospects in the future if he follows you, he said as he stared at Immortal Toya. Immortal Toya's fair face flushed slightly. Senior, you flatter me. No, this is the truth. There aren't many juniors who I acknowledge these days. General E put his hands behind his back. But I also find it very strange. Since he's your disciple, why don't you announce it to the public? Immortal Toya broke out in a cold sweat at this question. General E was a great senior who had started out as an investigator, and he was also very strong. A normal person would have already given himself away under these few questions. However, Immortal Toya reacted very quickly. If I announce it to the public, it'll be good for his academic development, and he won't have to worry too much about the school he graduates from. But this kind of celebrity effect is actually very bad for his growth. Hearing this, General Yi's eyes lit up. He was actually very satisfied with this explanation. What you said makes sense. There are indeed too many juniors nowadays who are too impatient, and it's hard for them to achieve great things. Immortal Toya smiled as he looked at General Yi. So, I earnestly asked Senior to continue hiding this matter for Junior. Since you've said so, and this is your disciple, this old man will definitely agree. General Yi nodded very straightforwardly. There was actually a hint of reluctance in his eyes as he looked at Wang Ling, little classmate. If we have the chance to meet again in the future, I hope you will improve further. Of course, it was not easy to cultivate to the Golden Core realm at this age. He's much stronger than your senior Ajua. Wang Ling, Immortal Toya, sweated. What a F** King Jindan, which Golden Core could close the gate between worlds with their bare hands. Now I'll take my leave first. This old devil and his accomplice in the stone ghost mask, the master of Shadow Stream Jiang Luiyue, have both been arrested, and it'll take a long time to interrogate them. I'll leave this match to you. General Yi held onto a spirit shackle, the other end of which was tied to the old devil's spirit shackles. The old devil followed behind General Yi without saying a word. After putting on the spirit shackles, all his spirit energy was sealed, and the old devil was now like an ordinary person. His spiritual senses and 5 senses had all been blocked. Immortal Toya cupped his fists in salute to General Yi and bowed respectfully. Senior, take care. General Yi waved at the two of them, then tore open a space on the spot and led the old devil inside. Just as the space fissure was about to close, a spirit light shot out from inside and landed firmly in Wang Ling's hand. Little classmate, it can be considered fate that we met. You can keep this for now. This old man has promised to give you some good fortune. General Yi and the old devil had already escaped into the space and left. The voice came from far away and directly reached Wang Ling's ears. It was a transparent and warm rune stone with complex and difficult-to-understand ancient characters engraved on it. It was the size of a palm and looked a little like a shell. Senior Ling, this is? Immortal Toya was also dazed when he saw this object. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched, because this rune stone was the power source of this small world. A rune stone that controls the power source of this small world? Immortal Toya was astonished. The system randomly generates the poisonous fog, but if there's a rune stone with the power of the origin, when the last wave of poisonous fog shrinks, it will converge on the rune stone as the center. Wang Ling, Immortal Toya. So controlling the power of the origin is the same as controlling the destiny circle. Wang Ling, So, can you put down your arm first, Sorry, Senior Ling. Immortal Toya hurriedly let go. It seemed that he had accidentally brushed against Ling Junren's hair just now. It was really super soft and smooth. What brand of shampoo did Ling Junren use? Oh wait, that didn't seem to be the point. What the hell? Did Ling Junren speak just now? Immortal Toya carefully recalled the details just now. While he was shocked, he also had the intoxicated expression of a fangirl. Ling Junren's voice was really nice. After the competition had been suspended for about 3 hours, the survival contest finally resumed. In a large supermarket, He Buff and Little Peanut and Dopey Guo were all solemnly waiting. The supermarket side door had been blown open by several Shao Clan disciples from God Vision High School who had engaged in a massive firefight earlier. On their side, there were only a dozen or so people hiding in the supermarket, which was a direct drop of more than half of the number at the beginning. "What should we do now?" asked a number 59 high school student. When the competition was suspended earlier, that bunch of grandsons also found a building to hide in. There's not much time left before the last wave of poisonous fog shrinks. We have to find a suitable position as soon as possible. He Buffung frowned. Although we're still in the circle now, we can't guarantee that the next safe zone will be on our side. If we leave the supermarket now, we'll be no different from a live target. Senior He, do you have any ideas? Little Peanut asked. Our position is very poor. We need to win now. unless the destiny circle refreshes next to us. He buffing thought for a long while, a mysterious light in his eyes. Actually, we still have a last resort. Chapter 237. Every school, or perhaps every class, would always have a little angel in charge of intelligence and gossip. Number 60 High School's Dopey Gua was one of them. Number 59 High School Song Kai was the same. Relying on his skill in astrology, Song Kai earned a lot of extra money at school and also made a lot of friends. 1,000 yuan for each divination, with no refunds. Thus, as the 13th generation descendant of the Tuchika Kanjiji astrology family, Song Kai had always been very confident in astrology. Recently, however, Song Kai had begun to doubt the accuracy of his own astrology. This matter had to start from a while ago. In addition to school, Song Kai had many loyal customers for astrology. In fact, he had also opened an online shop. Song Kai remembered that a few days after his shop had opened, a customer had come over to ask for his recent fortune. Divination was Song Kai's specialty. As long as he knew the other party's zodiac sign and specific date of birth, memorized this information, and prayed silently, the final fortune value would be displayed on the crystal ball. Song Kai remembered that day. This was a phenomenon he had never seen before, because what the crystal ball displayed wasn't the usual fortune value. Instead, it displayed 3 English letters, Jisum. Song Kai had thought that his crystal ball had been damaged and the numbers were garbled. In the end, after replacing it with a spare crystal ball at home, the divination result was still those 3 mysterious English letters. Song Kai was going crazy. Who could tell him what the F***K this meant? Therefore, when he Buffing mentioned astrology again and introduced himself in front of the crowd, everyone was shocked. Song Kai indeed felt his scalp go numb. Student Song, your astrology has always been very accurate. Can you see the final heavenly circle through one of us? He buffing asked. The youngster with gold-rimmed glasses sat in the corner, hugging his knees with a vexed expression on his face. Senior, my astrology might have failed. How will you know if you don't try again? He buffing patted Song Kai on the shoulder with a resolute look in his eyes. Song Kai raised his head, his eyes glistening with tears. When a person had doubts about their own life, the most important thing was the encouragement of others. It could be said that he Bufing's encouragement was actually quite important. Song Kai pondered for a long time and looked at the hopeful eyes of many students around him. Finally, Song Kai stood up silently and said to the crowd, "Then, please help me find if there are any crystal balls nearby. If there aren't any, glass products will do as well. The thing that astrology consumes the most is the crystal ball, because every time astrology is launched, a crack would appear on the crystal ball. A crystal ball could only be used 4 times at most, because a broken crystal ball would greatly affect the effect of astrology." "So it could be replaced with glass?" someone asked. "Sure," Song Chai nodded. "But if it's not a regular divination crystal ball, other glass products are basically useless after one divination. Also, the accuracy is lower than a regular divination crystal ball, about 10 to 20% lower. Overall, the difference isn't that big." "Oh, so that's how it is." The surrounding students all revealed expressions of knowledge. Fortunately, their base was in a large supermarket, and there were many glass products to choose from. In the end, Song Kai chose a large electric light bulb that Little Peanut had found. "Let's use this. What do we do next?" He buffing asked. Song Kai looked around and said, "I'll hold this electric light bulb and perform the astrology. Everyone, hold hands and form a circle around me. This will improve the accuracy of the astrology." Although almost everyone basically lost the courage to hold hands with the opposite sex after finishing 3rd grade in primary school for the sake of victory, everyone still did as they were told. Holding hands and praying together was the most basic way to improve the accuracy of astrology. 11 after the ceremony was completed, Song Kai nodded with satisfaction, then slowly sat down cross-legged in the center with the electric light bulb in his hand. He took a deep breath and tried to relax as much as possible. Then he gathered his spiritual power on the light bulb in his hand. The light bulb was affected by the spiritual power and lit up with a ding sound. A moment later, there was a bang, and the light bulb directly exploded in Song Kai's hand. The surrounding students were startled. Did he fail? No, it's already a success. Song Kai slowly opened his eyes and looked up at the sky. In 10 seconds, the astrology divination will be reflected in the air. Everyone held their breaths, their eyes fixed on a void. 10 seconds later, the astrology divination slowly unfolded in the air. Song Kai raised his head and once again saw those 3 huge English letters appear in front of him. Song Kai, Mom. Sure enough, my astrology is broken. GCM, what on earth does that mean? In the supermarket, everyone stared at the 3 letters and pondered. Photocatalyst, Guochunmei. Engineering. He buffing said several words in a row, and then his eyes lit up. Could it be the climax? Everyone, Wang Ling never thought that General Yi would actually leave the small world's origin runestone for him. This was a very valuable gift. He was well aware that General Yi's idea was that as long as he kept this runestone, he would definitely be able to rely on the Destiny Circle to win this competition. Furthermore, with this origin runestone in hand, Wang Ling could wantonly absorb the small world's spirit energy for his own use. Wang Ling had a headache. This was a hot potato for him. He never wanted to attract attention, but if he won this survival contest, he was bound to become the center of attention. Senior Ling, is this origin rune stone hurting? Immortal Toya asked as he stared at it. Wang Ling pinched the rune stone, and his hand glowed with light. Immortal Toya then saw the rune stone actually disappear. In fact, Wang Ling had been inspired by the ancient barter array from before. He recalled the barter spell of the 3,000 great spells he had learned, which was actually very similar to the ancient barter array. You could trade what you wanted within a limited area. Still in that large supermarket, Dopigwa clutched his stomach as he hid in the toilet. His stomach had hurt again when he had gone to look for glassware earlier. In the end, he had run into the toilet in a hurry, only to realize that there wasn't even any toilet paper around him. Dopigwa fumbled around in his storage bag for a long time, and sadly realized that he only had a gift bag of snacks next to him. He had risked his life to loot it when the airdrop had fallen at the entrance of the supermarket. But as master of Dopey, a master was a master in the end. At that moment, Dopigwa quickly thought of the crispy noodle snacks in the gift bag, which had a car collection card. He could use this card in place of toilet paper. Thinking this, Dopigwa hurriedly took out the crispy noodle snacks in excitement. But the moment he took it out, the crispy noodle snacks in his hand flashed with spirit light and turned into a shell-like rune stone. Chapter 238. It was June 16th on Thursday, in the 8th week of the semester. The survival contest portion of the week-long military training exercise for the 6 schools finally came to an end as the last blue circle shrank. This was a little unexpected, because up until the last blue circle shrank, there were still more than 4,000 students struggling bitterly in the narrow, already very small, safe area. In the end, most of them had been poisoned to death by the last shrinking of the poisonous fog. On this day, the sun was shining brightly and the wind was gentle. In the big square of the military training base in the western suburbs of Songhai City, Ajwa of the General Administration of 100 schools stood on the podium to announce the final result. The final number of people remaining in this survival contest is 1. Student Hirogwa of number 60 high school, who was in the toilet at the time, is the final winner. Then, Ajwa and Immortal Toya on the side started to applaud. Unfortunately, this inning was really too frightening. For a moment, the 10,000 students, the headmasters of the 6 schools, and Secretary Dakon were all stupefied, and there was an awkward silence. For some reason, the headmasters of number 59 high school and number 60 high school on the winning side couldn't be happy at all. Student Hirogwa, on the other hand, had been forced to withdraw from the military training after leaving the small world because of unbearable abdominal pain, and had been sent to the emergency department of the city hospital. Ajwa was a little embarrassed. He cleared his throat and said into the microphone, "Now, because student Hirogwa is unable to attend, number 60 high school's teacher in charge of grade 1, class 3, teacher Pan Shunsong, will come on stage to receive the medal and trophy on his behalf. Of all the people present, teacher Pan was probably the only one smiling like a sunflower. Under everyone's gazes, this middle-aged woman with a ponytail, number 60 high school's teaching pioneer, jumped onto the stage in 2 or 3 steps and happily took the trophy. She looked happier than if she had won the Golden Rooster Award for Best Actress. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your support and encouragement. This trophy and this banner belong to our number 59 high school and number 60 high school. Who knew if it was because of Teacher Pan's excitement, but at that moment, there was finally some sporadic applause in the hall. Taking advantage of this enthusiasm, Zhuo continued. Now, Teacher Pan, please unfurl this banner which has been personally inscribed by Secretary Dakong of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools. Okay. Teacher Pan nodded and slowly unfurled the silk banner. Suddenly, everyone saw what seemed to be 10,000 rays of golden light shooting out from the gilded characters on the silk banner. Secretary Dakong had used great magic to write these words on the banner. The instant the banner was unfurled, there was a dazzling light so bright that people couldn't open their eyes. Standing in the crowd, Wang Ling's heavenly "I wasn't affected by the golden light." His gaze pierced through the layers of golden light and instantly saw the large golden characters printed on the silk banner. Goli, Wang Ling, the military training was not over yet. In the next few days, it would be comprehensive training. Standing in military posture, standing at attention, resting, none of these could escape. Over the next few days, Dopey became a well-known figure among the 6 schools. Relying on the Destiny Circle to win the competition, his luck was simply too good. The most important thing was that Dopey Gua had received the attention of all sectors of society after he passed the joint military training exercise of the 6 schools. In the future, his path to higher education would be smooth sailing. From what Wang Ling had heard, it was said that a number of universities had already extended olive branches to Dopey Gua's family in advance. In the eyes of many university presidents, while strength and talent were certainly very important on the path of cultivation, luck was often also a part of strength. That night, after returning from the military training, Wang Ling saw a message on the public platform of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools. Secretary Dakong wanted to inscribe something on the trophy for Dopey Gua, but he hadn't thought of what to inscribe, so he had used the public platform to ask for comments. Wang Ling swept his finger over the screen and saw that there were a lot of replies in the selected comments. Among them, there were Chinibu comments, such as, "The Chosen One," "Dopey Nicholas." There were also funny comments, such as, "King of Squats," "The Strongest King of Squats," "Mother Wan's Victim." The comment with the highest number of votes was the one written by Super Chin himself, "King of 60 Hypocrites." Wang Ling saw that this comment had received more than 8,000 likes in total. While Wang Ling was away, the Wang family's small villa hadn't been idle. On the morning that the results of the survival contest were announced, a black car drove up to the entrance of the Wang family's small villa. A man with slicked back hair and goggles got out of the car at the entrance of the villa. He was carrying a briefcase in his hand. This is where Senior Ling lives. Standing at the entrance of the villa, Dharmaraja was a little excited. Apart from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Immortal Toya, he was the 3rd person in the entire chat group to come to the Wang family's house. Similarly, before coming to the villa, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had repeatedly exhorted him to go there with the reverence of Senior. Standing at the entrance, Dharmaraja pressed the doorbell. Very quickly, he heard faint footsteps on the other side of the door. Grandfather Wang had come to open the door. "Who is it?" As soon as he opened the door, Dharmaraja's eyes straightaway twitched violently. He had heard grenade-throwing Senior Immortal say that apart from Ling Zhenren, there were 3 seniors in this villa. The most unfathomable of them all was an old man. Dharmaraja never thought that he would actually run into this great senior on his first visit. Thus, as soon as they met, Dharmaraja straightaway bowed deeply at a 90-degree angle. Old Senior Wang, hello. Senior, a while ago, Ling Jinren left a spirit sword here for repair, and this junior has specially come to deliver it to him. Oh, thank you for your hard work. Come in and take a seat. Come in and change into your slippers, and remember to close the door. The old man responded and slowly entered the house with his hands clasped behind his back. He then went to the kitchen to make a cup of tea and brought it to Dharmaraja. Mom Ling has gone out to buy groceries, and Dad Ling is still in the study going over a manuscript with his. Dharmaraja took the tea from the old man with some trepidation. So Senior Ling's father is a writer? The old man nodded. His pen name is Wang Situ. What the hell? Wang Situ? Lightning Dharmaraja was stupefied. He remembered reading the stuff this guru had written when he had taken the subway to work. He had never expected this person to be Senior Ling's father. I was just writing for fun at first, but I never thought that I would be able to earn money. Grandfather Wang smiled slightly. Hearing this, Dharmaraja's awe of Father Wang deepened. He was just writing for fun, but he could actually earn money. After all, this was a great senior hiding behind the scenes. Sure enough, he was a talent in every aspect. Furthermore, Dharmaraja remembered listening to a recorded interview with Father Wang. Not only was he a talent, he also had a nice way of speaking. He really liked it. Chapter 239. Actually, Dharmaraja was well aware that there were actually a lot of experts in the cultivation circle who liked to retire behind the scenes these days. For example, in the secular world, some people were willing to give up all their fame and fortune for the sake of immortality. In the cultivation circle, there were naturally old seniors who envied ordinary people's ordinary lives and planned to live in seclusion in the secular world. These old seniors who lived in seclusion in the secular world generally felt that cultivation was all for naught in the end. Even if they cultivated to be immortal, it didn't mean anything. People would always get tired of living. If there really was someone who was immortal, that would be terrifying. The reason why Dharmaraja admired Father Wang so much was that this senior had completely chosen to blend into the secular world and go to the bottom of society to earn money and live in the secular world. Dharmaraja didn't think he could do this alone. Many cultivators had jobs in the secular world, but most of these jobs were for their peers in the cultivation circle. For example, Dharmaraja used the godly thunder inheritance to repair magic weapons, but he still earned money from cultivators. Father Wang, on the other hand, had managed to do both with just one book. Dharmaraja was especially shaken. Sure enough, a great senior was a great senior. Magic light shone everywhere he went. Dharmaraja respectfully picked up the cup of tea which Grandfather Wang had handed him. When he saw his face reflected in the steaming tea, he instantly fell silent. He knew that when Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had come to visit the Wang family's small villa back then, Grandfather Wang had served him a bowl of tomato egg soup and a broccoli. To this day, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still hadn't understood the morality behind it. Now, this old senior had served him a cup of tea. What on earth was the meaning of this cup of tea? The scene fell silent. Holding the cup of tea, Dharmaraja was silent for a long time, unable to bear to take a sip. He wanted to take this cup of tea back to study it. Dharmaraja sat in the Wang family's small villa until noon. Seeing that Mother Wang was about to come back with groceries, the old man insisted that Dharmaraja stay for lunch. Dharmaraja felt overwhelmed by this old senior's invitation and didn't dare refuse at all. It wasn't long before Dharmaraja heard movement outside the door. A woman carrying several bags of groceries swiftly opened the door and flew in like a spy before swiftly closing the door behind her. The old man was startled by the noise. "What's going on?" Wang Ma listened to the movement outside the door, made a shushing gesture, and whispered, "Dad, it seems that someone is following me." "Follow you?" Old man Wang frowned. "Yeah." Mother Wang nodded. "It seems like he's been following me for a long time." When I was buying groceries, I felt like a pair of eyes was staring at me. At this point, Mother Wang turned her gaze to Dharmaraja. "Huh? Who are you?" "I'm here on Senior Ling's orders to deliver the repaired spirit sword." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Senior." Please advise me. Dharmaraja bowed deeply to Mother Wang. Mother Wang suddenly understood. So you're Dharmaraja. Ling Ling mentioned you before. Dharmaraja was so moved that a thin layer of mist immediately formed under his goggles. He never thought that Senior Ling would actually mention him to the other great seniors outside of their daily lives. What an honor this was. Dharmaraja wiped away his tears of excitement. Seeing Mother Wang's worried expression as she looked outside the door, he used his heavenly eye to look through his goggles. Sure enough, he spotted a furtive figure on the side of the road. Seniors, I see that person. The man was wearing sunglasses and a gray windbreaker, and he exuded a dangerous aura. Almost at the same time that Dharmaraja's heavenly eye tracked the figure, the man in sunglasses instantly raised his head. He was already fully aware that he had been discovered, but he didn't panic at all. His gaze met Dharmaraja's indifferent gaze, and a few seconds later, Dharmaraja's eyes widened in shock. Ah, not good. Then, he was shaken by the look in the other party's eyes, and he stumbled back several steps. After taking off his goggles, Dharmaraja realized that his eyes were bloodshot. This was an expert. It seems that he's an expert. Old Man Wang sighed silently. It was clear that the person following Mother Wang didn't have good intentions. Damn it! Dharmaraja took out a pill to calm his spirit energy fluctuations and quickly swallowed it, then used the power of the godly thunder inheritance to protect his injured eyes. He realized that not only was the person outside very strong, he was also very cunning. That gaze just now had directly pierced the top of his skull, directly numbing his optic nerves and causing intermittent bloodshot fits. If it wasn't for the pill and the godly thunder inheritance, Dharmaraja felt that if it was someone else, their heavenly, I might have been crippled. After that exchange, just now, Dharmaraja already had an assessment of this person's strength. He had already lost in a contest of auras, and this was no longer a fight he could intervene in at his level. Furthermore, Dharmaraja realized that this person's heavenly eye was extraordinary and gave him a strong sense of deterrence. Although he couldn't be 100% sure, Dharmaraja felt that this person had probably refined his heavenly eye into a magic weapon to increase its lethality. Dharmaraja had already heard from Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal in the chat group that this method of refining a part of the body into a magic weapon was the work of a dark force that had been causing trouble for Senior Wang's family recently. Thus, Dharmaraja guessed that this person was probably from a mortal mansion. But now what should he do? Did the seniors in the Wang family's small villa have to personally take action? As Dharmaraja sat cross-legged on the ground to regulate his breathing, he turned to look at Old Man Wang next to him and sighed slightly. Senior, I'm very sorry. This person is really too powerful. He was a little vexed. He had wanted to do his best to show off in front of so many seniors. No, you've already done very well. The old man smiled slightly. You're a guest, and this person is obviously here for us. It's only right that we deal with this trouble ourselves. The old man lowered his voice in a magnetic tone. Wang Ling had gone to participate in the school's military training, and even Loopy Toad had been picked up by their teacher in charge and wouldn't be back for a while. Perhaps in the eyes of those forces with ulterior motives toward the Wang family, this was a window of opportunity for them to come and cause trouble. At that moment, father and daughter's gazes met, and they actually felt a telepathic connection at the same time. There's no other way, the old man sighed in his heart. Since they had deliberately come to cause trouble, a fight was unavoidable. With his hands behind his back and his eyelids slightly lowered, there was actually something mysterious about his old eyes. Old Senior Wang was going to make a move. Dharmaraja was extremely astonished, but he realized that things weren't that simple. Old Man Wang silently walked over to the door and put his hand on the doorknob. Almost the instant he opened the door, the old man's gaze swiftly turned to the second floor, and he shouted with great boldness, "Open the door! Let Jink out!" Chapter 240. 10 minutes ago, a man in black sunglasses and a gray windbreaker had followed Mother Wang to the entrance of the Wang family small villa. The man was tall and sturdy, and a beret covered his big bald head. At first glance, he looked a little like those muscular men in foreign movies. "It's here." Under the sunglasses, the man narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction of the villa. He pulled open his lapel and pulled out the earpiece hidden inside to report the situation. "Chief, I found the target's location, just like the lady of the castle said." The voice on the other end of the earpiece was very low. "You did well, Little Tan. Find out the truth about this family. Also, it's best if you can clearly investigate their relationship with that hawthorn tree. This has to do with Master's year-end assessment of me, so you can't be careless." The man nodded. "Don't worry, Chief. According to the information we gathered from various sources, the youth that Xiao Yu fought last time lives in this villa. It said that he only used one finger to catch the 50-fold power of Little Yu's abyss avoidance slash." Hearing this, the man couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. The Little Yu the chief was talking about was a genius whom Master had carefully selected from 10,000 people, and was also his trusted aide. Back then, Master had personally given him abyss avoidance at Immortal Mansion's annual party. This was a spirit sword that ranked first in speed on the historical cultivation list of swords. No matter what, we have to be careful today. Apart from us, the southern, northern, and western branches of Immortal Talisman are also looking for this family. The lady of the castle from Immortal Castle is an informant that I had arranged for many years ago. Since our Easter branch has gotten hold of this information first, we have to make good use of it. The call ended here. The man adjusted his beret and heaved a sigh of relief. This was because before he had made the call, he had already used his spiritual senses to carefully sense that that terrifying youngster didn't seem to be in the villa today. During the call, there had actually been a reckless person who had dared to glare at him with his heavenly eye. During the call with the chief, he had also opened his heavenly eye to retaliate, directly making the other party's eyes bloodshot. Has the only fighting strength disappeared? The man looked in the direction of the villa and sneered. The man who had used the heavenly eye on him earlier should be the only combat power he could sense in this villa. Now that this person was injured, the man was certain that there would be no other unstable factors in this villa. Didn't this mean that he could do whatever he wanted in this mission? However, just as the man stepped into the entrance of the Wang family's small villa, he realized that the door of the villa was actually open. Then, the shadow of a brown sword shot out from the door. How fast could a spiritual sword be? The man called Xiao Tan felt that his worldview had been refreshed once again. Because his eyes were very special, the man had chosen the path of refining his eyes the year he joined Immortal Mansion. When he opened his third eye, his power would be dozens of times greater than that of an ordinary third eye, and he would be able to exert his dynamic vision to the extreme. However, when this brown sword shadow dashed out of the door, he was shocked to find that his eyes could not catch it at all. As the sword light approached infinitely, the man was so startled that he broke out in a cold sweat under his beret. However, the approaching brown sword shadow stopped about 10 centimeters away from the man. He saw the sword shadow dissipate into streaks of light before finally condensing into a human figure. It was actually a child in a brown and white robe, with short gray bangs dancing in the wind as he stared coldly at the man. This was a sword spirit? The man stared at this scene in disbelief. Unless the owner summoned a sword spirit on the spot through a contract, it was very rare for a sword spirit to manifest on its own under normal circumstances. The man felt that he had miscalculated. He had only focused on using his spiritual senses to sense a person's aura, but had overlooked a situation like the appearance of a magic treasure's weapon spirit. Whether it was a spirit sword spirit or a magic treasure's weapon spirit, all of their auras were sealed in the vessel before they manifested themselves, so it was very easy for people to overlook them. But he didn't have time to think about it now. Jinka was already walking toward him. The man activated his third eye power to the extreme, and his pupils blossomed like a kaleidoscope. As he released the power of his third eye, golden blades appeared in the air, which finally condensed into a storm that spun like an electric drill as it stabbed toward Jinka. These blades were made of spirit light, formed from the spirit energy of heaven and earth, and were a product of the spirit energy of heaven and earth. They didn't have destructive power, but were exceptionally sturdy. Combined with the third eye power, they formed a storm, which was a devastating blow. This power was very impressive, and Dharmaraja in the villa was shocked to see it. If it hit him, it would definitely leave a big hole in his body. In the face of this storm of spirit light, Jinka's expression didn't change in the slightest. Maintaining his indifferent attitude, he walked step by step toward the center of the storm. From his position in the villa, Dharmaraja could clearly see Jinka's figure, and he felt that this sword spirit's eyes were very similar to Ling Jinren's. Ding! Ding ding ding! Ding ding ding! The storm wrapped around Jinka and exploded into violent collisions, but Jinka's sword light kept it all at bay. The man was shocked. He could clearly see how powerful this sword spirit was, but he never thought that his attack wouldn't have any effect at all. He opened his third eye and increased his third eye power, and 2 streams of blood flowed from the corners of his eyes. Looking at this scene, Jinka stood motionless in the middle of the storm of spirit light. Then, with a snap of his fingers, a brown sword light burst out of Jinka's body. This scene was like the descent of a miracle. This frightening storm of spirit light was actually forcibly parted by Jinka, as if parting the sea to create a safe passage in the middle. Jinka saw the man's jaw drop, but his expression didn't change in the slightest as he walked along the passage toward the man. In the end, Jinka reached the man, and there was a huge contrast in their heights. The man was tall and sturdy at 190 centimeters, but Jinka wasn't tall and only reached a little above the man's waist. Whether from afar or up close, he was just a child. However, there was no pressure from his aura. Just looking at the brown sword light gradually approaching Jinka, the man was already so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. He was scared out of his wits, and even his knees couldn't help trembling. Chapter 241. By now, the man from Immortal Mansion's eastern branch had completely realized that this was a meaningless fight, because he had no chance of winning from the very beginning. "You're from Immortal Mansion?" At that moment, the man heard a rough, questioning voice from beside him. It carried a thick sense of heaviness, and a huge shadow loomed over him. He saw 2 strong men with muscles as big as Jinhua hams appear in front of him, and they were even taller than him. Where on earth had these 2 come from? No, wait. There seemed to be another person. Startled, the man looked up and saw that in addition to these 2 muscular men, there was also a little girl in a gray robe with pink-haired buns. She was sitting on the shoulder of one of the men, her head cocked to one side as she looked at him. The man was already completely confused. It wasn't just this sword spirit. These 3 people who had come out of nowhere all had auras stronger than his. If the man was given another chance, he just wanted to call his superior and tell him, "Chief, I don't want to play anymore." It wasn't a matter of whether he wanted to play or not. He couldn't beat them at all. There's no other way. The burly man from Immortal Mansion felt hopeless. The situation had exceeded his expectations time and time again, and was completely out of his control. Now, he could only think of a way to escape. Fortunately, he had made sufficient preparations before coming here. He had prepared an Earth Escape Talisman. As long as he had this talisman, even if these people were stronger than him, as long as the Immortal Talisman was successfully activated, he would have a chance to escape. At that moment, the man's mind was filled with countless thoughts, but it only lasted for a moment. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that this terrifying sword spirit hadn't completely surrounded him with the other 3 people on the other side to escape. He quickly formed a seal with his hands and threw out the burrowing talisman that he had prepared in advance. The moment the magic light shone, the ground under the man's feet suddenly turned into a mass of quicksand, and his whole body quickly sank into the sand. To ensure that he wouldn't be caught, he even cast a divine speed formula on himself. This was a high-grade, heaven-grade spirit technique used to increase speed, and was also a secret body movement technique of Immortal Mansion. Under the effect of this divine speed formula, the man's speed increased by 5 times on the basis of the Earth Escape Talisman's escape speed. He felt that, with his current speed, he should be able to pull away from the 4 of them. Supported by the magic light of the Earth Escape Talisman, his figure was swiftly sucked into the wheel of quicksand under his feet, and he disappeared on the spot. Seeing that the burrowing talisman had taken effect, the man who had already burrowed into the ground along with the light let out a sigh of relief. However, the Earth Escape Talisman was forced to stop halfway. The man saw a little girl's face appear in the underground tunnel ahead. The little girl stared straight at him, then reached out with her little hands and pulled him out from the ground. Less than 10 seconds after the man used the burrowing talisman to escape, she bounced back from afar. Jinka saw that her little hand was holding a dog leash which was directly connected to the collar around the man's neck. Pen and Eraser were startled because it was Father Wong who had bought this collar and leash for Loopy Toad. Because Loopy Toad had always been unwilling to wear them, it had hidden them in the attic after buying them. Who knew when they had been tossed into Sheep's hands? Sheep's little hand gripped the dog leash as she threw the man in front of the 2 big men and straddled him. How boring. He's so slow. I even specially went upstairs to get the collar and leash just now. I didn't expect him to run so fast. The man wanted to cry a little, so it turned out that there was a bunch of big shots living in this villa that he couldn't sense. Jinka crouched down and pressed one hand against the man's forehead. The man was instantly drenched in sweat and felt like he was about to be executed. The pressure Jinka put on him was too great. There clearly wasn't a trace of spiritual pressure on him, and he was just staring at him, but it felt like he was staring at death. Jinka had already sensed the other party's aura in their previous exchange, but he hadn't been very sure. After careful comparison, Jinka was now certain that this man was from a mortal mansion. The scent of spirit energy on him was exactly the same as that of the red-haired young man who had fought the old devil with the Abyss Avoidance sword at the entrance of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house. Then, Jinka raised his hand. Several balls of brown sword chi gathered in his fingers, and he slapped the man on the head. He used sword chi to seal the man's spirit acupuncture points, and for a very long time, the man wouldn't be able to use spirit energy. Lord Jinka, how should we deal with him? Pen and Eraser, the 2 big men, looked at Jinka. Ling, don't like troublesome. Jinka looked at the man on the ground. You guys deal with him. I want to rest for a while. Now that the man was caught and his spirit energy was sealed, Jinka couldn't be bothered to deal with him anymore and would leave the rest to the others. He yawned, and the sword light around him surged again before finally turning back into a sword which fell into the hands of a big man on the side. Put me back on the bed. Pen and Eraser, the man rubbed his eyes. When he saw Jinka change back into his original form, he thought he was seeing things. In the end, he was stupefied once again because he never expected such a powerful sword spirit's true form to actually be a peach with spirit sword that could be found everywhere on the market. How should we deal with him? Throw him into the toilet? Pen asked with a sigh as he put Jinka away and looked at the man on the ground. Throwing him into the toilet doesn't seem like a good idea. Eraser shook his head. This immortal mansion has come looking for trouble time and time again. It's not easy to catch them, and we can ask them about their background. Pen, but Master isn't here now. It's fine. I saved Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's number. I'm sure he'll be interested. Saying this, Eraser took out his phone and dialed a number. Soon, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's magnetic voice came from the other end of the line. Hello, I'm Grenade-throwing. What can I do for you, Your Excellency? Is this Senior Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal? I'm Ling Jinren's enlightened spirit eraser. Just now, we caught someone from a mortal mansion trying to break into the Wong family's villa. Are you interested in coming? The big man asked. Oh, so it's you. I know you. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal laughed. Now that you mention it, I suddenly remember that Dharmaraja went to your place today to deliver a sword. Didn't Dharmaraja make a move? Eraser was silent for a bit, then decided to tell the truth. The person from a mortal mansion was very strong. Before Senior Dharmaraja could make a move, his aura backlashed him. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Before they even fought, he lost. Unfortunately, Senior Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, that's the truth. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took a deep breath and dropped his forehead into his hand. Tell him to leave the group. It's too shameful. Chapter 242. If Dharmaraja had not seen it with his own eyes, he would never have imagined that there were so many big shots hidden in the villa besides these three seniors. That gray-robed girl with pink bun hair was absolutely terrifying. When she moved, she looked like a ray of light that flew everywhere. Not even Digga dared to do this. There were also two muscular men beside the little girl. One of them was wearing a straw hat, while the other was wearing a suit of armor. Their bodies were muscular, and their bones were thick and sturdy. They stood there as mighty as mountains, giving off a strong sense of oppression. Dharmaraja shrunk his neck, and his gaze fell on the old man next to him. Senior Wong, may I ask who these three seniors are? Oh, you mean them? The old man scratched his head. These were all enchanted by Ling Ling. The one in the straw hat was originally Eraser. The one in the armor was originally Pin, and the little girl was originally a tricycle. Lele painted and waxed her not long ago. Dharmaraja was dumbfounded. There was actually such a thing? No wonder this little girl wouldn't let go of the tire in her hand. While they were discussing this with Grandfather Wong, Sheep had already dragged the man from Immortal Mansion into the villa at the entrance. This guy's spirit acupuncture points had all been sealed by Jinka, and he was now even more ordinary than an ordinary person. Apart from being a little bigger, there was nothing good about him, and he probably couldn't even beat Mother Wong, a middle-aged woman at the body condensation stage. As the man was dragged through the door, he opened his mouth wide and let out muffled sounds. Dharmaraja was very puzzled. His spirit acupoints have been sealed. How come he can't even speak? Oh, I just sealed his tongue acupoint. Eraser replied. Let's leave the interrogation to Senior Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. We're all amateurs. Dharmaraja was shocked again. You called Senior over? That's right, Little Master Ling told us before that Senior Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal has been investigating Immortal Mansion all along. He had long since anticipated that these people from Immortal Mansion would lose their cool and come looking for trouble at the villa. So he had already told us beforehand that if we encountered them, we would capture them on the spot and then help Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal investigate them. So that's how it is. Dharmaraja nodded his head and admired Wong Ling even more in his heart. Ling Jinren, in the end, had even calculated this step. As expected, his foresight was miraculous. Oh, by the way, what else did the Supreme say? After coming back to his senses, Fuwang had a grin on his face again. He felt that since he had personally come to deliver the sword, Senior should at least give him some praise. Eraser sank into silence once again. He hadn't planned to say anything at first, because he knew that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was just joking. But since it had come to this, he finally decided to answer Dharmaraja's doubts. After thinking for a moment, Eraser said bluntly, Senior Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wants you to leave the group. We haven't even started fighting, and we've already suffered a backlash. This is too embarrassing. As a man, he had a big body and a big heart. That was how upright he was. Dharmaraja's cheeks streamed with tears. So Perfected Immortal hated him. As soon as he said this, Sheep, who was riding the man from Immortal Mansion like he was a horse, gave Dharmaraja a strange look. She seemed to have heard something shattering. After that, there was the sound of stir-frying in the kitchen as Grandfather Wong and Mother Wong personally cooked. Thinking that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal would be coming over later, the old man stewed all the broccoli he had stockpiled last time into a pot of soup. There were also a lot of people sitting in the living room of the Wong family's villa. Pin and Eraser had initially planned to directly change back to their original forms after carrying out the task, but they had to wait for Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to hand over the task before it could truly be considered over. So until then, they still maintained their human forms. The old man had in fact never regarded these gremlins who had been enlightened by Wong Ling as outsiders and had very politely invited them to have lunch together. So at noon that day, the Wong family's living room was especially lively. Eraser, Pin, Sheep, and Dharmaraja were playing werewolf in the living room, while Sheep sat on the bound man from Immortal Mansion as a cushion. Apart from the three of you, there should be other seniors who have been enlightened by Ling Jinren in the villa, right? Dharmaraja took a look at his ID card and asked weakly while playing cards. We don't deserve to be called seniors. We're just gremlins who have been enlightened by Little Master Ling and can't cultivate. The strength of our realms is completely up to our master. Lord Dharmaraja has relied on his own efforts to cultivate step by step to reach this stage. You are the great senior. Eraser laughed and was very humble. Of course, we aren't the only ones who have been enlightened in the villa, but apart from us, there are very few who can take human form. The only ones left are Lord Pen Immortal and Lord Ma. These two are Lightning Dharmaraja. Lord Pen's spirit's ability is similar to Lord Ma's. Lord Pen's spirit only needs to draw a circle to bring a person to any location. However, it's limited to a location that can be detected in the current world. The effect is similar to a teleportation door. The effect is similar to a portal, and the spaces that Lord Ma connects are all extremely dangerous places, possibly alternate dimensions. Once you're sucked into one, you might never come back, Eraser explained. Hearing this, Dharmaraja felt like his worldview had been refreshed. Ling Jinren was actually this strong. The magic treasures he had casually enlightened all had such formidable abilities. I have one more question. Dharmaraja took a deep breath. He felt that he had touched upon some taboo topic, but he really couldn't resist his desire to gossip. Do the three of you know Lord Jinka's origin? Oh, you mean Lord Jinka? I thought Senior Dharmaraja was going to ask some strange question. Eraser chuckled. Actually, Jinka's background was already no longer a secret. When grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had come to the Wong family's small villa back then, Grandfather Wong had explained Jinka's background in less than 10 seconds in one go. Lord Jinka, Little Master Ling's father, bought this from the flower and bird market back then. Eraser answered succinctly. Dharmaraja. That's it. That's right, that's it. Eraser nodded and said, also, it's 998 yuan, a fair deal. Dharmaraja really want to calm down now. About 15 minutes later, Mother Wong and the old man had already prepared lunch. Dharmaraja estimated the time and felt that Senior Immortal would be at the villa's entrance soon. He raised his head and looked upstairs. Should I call Lord Pen Immortal and Lord Ma down for lunch? Oh, that's not necessary. Eraser shook his head. Lord Pen Immortal has a problem, and that's that he's very sleepy. It's best not to disturb him when he's sleeping. Dharmaraja, then what about Lord Ma? Hearing this, Pen, Eraser, and Sheep all had horrified expressions on their faces. Senior Dharmaraja, are you willing to eat with the toilet? Chapter 243. After all this time, it turned out that this Lord Ma was actually referring to the toilet. Dharmaraja really wanted to bang his head against the wall. What the hell was this Lord Ma? He already felt that he couldn't keep up with these great seniors' train of thought. Could it be that cultivation nowadays didn't just rely on talent, but also on imagination? Dharmaraja sank into deep thought. In fact, there were a lot of things that Wong Ling had enchanted in passing in the Wong family small villa. In addition to Lord Ma, there was also Lord Bao. It was just that this Lord Bao couldn't take on a human form, so Eraser had automatically ignored him. Lord Bao's original form was a donkey brandbag. This was Father Wong's gift to Mother Wong for her 20th wedding anniversary. In order to allow her to carry more things when she went shopping, Wong Ling had blessed this bag on the day he had given it to her. Lord Bao was very resourceful. Apart from helping Mother Wong carry a lot of things, if she ran into any trouble on the road, she could directly burrow into Lord Bao's storage space. In short, Lord Bao's space was so much more practical than Doraemon's. His skin was sturdier than Long John's. While Dharmaraja was contemplating life after witnessing all sorts of strange things in the Wong family's small villa, a beam of light approached the villa from the sky. Then, a man in white with beautiful hair descended from the sky. It was none other than Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. He carried an unknown immortal sword on his back, and at his waist were still those very dangerous-looking gray skybomb grenades. This was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's standard when he went out. But if he took the subway in this getup, he would definitely be arrested on the spot. That skybomb grenade was a secret weapon unique to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's family. Anyone who had seen it before could see its destructive power and ferocity. Furthermore, it was a hidden weapon and ranked first on the list of hidden weapons that could injure a soul formation cultivator, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Yo, hello everyone. Greetings, Senior Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Eraser and Pen got up to greet him. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Sheep, why do I notice that your color has faded again? Come back to Uncle's place. Uncle will wax and paint your body. Yes, yes. Sheep clapped her hands happily. As soon as he entered, he greeted Pen, Eraser, and Sheep with a hearty smile. Then he saw Fawang at the side, and his smile froze. Then he chose to ignore it on the spot. He turned around and carried the big bags of broccoli he had brought with him to the kitchen to get close to Grandfather Wong and Mother Wong. After about 2 or 3 minutes of small talk, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal came out of the kitchen. The expression on his face was much more relaxed than before. Senior Immortal? Dharmaraja raised his hand in greeting. When they had entered earlier, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had directly ignored him, which made him feel a little embarrassed. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at the man from Immortal Mansion whose acupoints had been sealed on the ground, then looked at Dharmaraja and sighed a little exasperatedly. As the successor of the godly Thunder inheritance, it's one thing if you don't cultivate hard, but every day you think about making extra money in the Shao family compound. You have the godly Thunder innate in your hands, but you still lost to this kind of trash's aura. This is the consequence of not making progress. Dharmaraja was speechless and fell into silence. Because that was the truth. As a descendant of the 12 ancient clans, he was the only surviving descendant of the Thunder clan, and also the sole heir to the Thunder clan's holy relic. After all, the godly Thunder inheritance was the only holy relic that had completely evolved from the Great Dochi period. It could be driven by spiritual energy alone. Dharmaraja had always felt that the Thunder clan's glory couldn't be restored by relying on himself. So all these years, he had been relying on the Thunder clan's name to make money with the help of the godly Thunder inheritance. Dharmaraja had thought that even if he didn't cultivate, he would still be able to obtain great power by relying on this holy relic. But after coming to the Wong family small villa today, he realized that he really was just a frog at the bottom of a well. He was really too insignificant. I won't say too much. In the future, you have to work even harder at cultivating. Lingzhenren is our goal. Seeing that Dharmaraja was reflecting on his actions with his head down, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't be bothered to say more. When all was said and done, the people in the group were his brothers and sisters. Sometimes there was no need to speak too harshly, and it was enough to stop where it was appropriate. Everyone was at the soul formation stage and was working hard to break through to the void refinement stage, so they had a rough idea of what was going on. Senior Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, you came just in time. This is the person from Immortal Mansion that we caught. Furthermore, he's probably a cadre. His spirit acupuncture point has already been sealed by Lord Jinka. Eraser pointed at the man under Sheep's buttocks. It's really been hard on you this time. It's also thanks to Brother Ling's foresight, knowing that this bunch of people would definitely come looking for trouble. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled, which looked especially sunny. Actually, even if we hadn't caught this tongue today, Brother Ling would have found a way to find Immortal Mansion's stronghold when he came back. Back then, Brother Ling buried a bomb in the abyss avoidance sword of that red-haired Immortal Mansion youngster in my house, so he could track his position. Eraser and Pen were silent when they heard this, because they both knew about this. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had in fact said this deliberately for this man to hear. After that, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal stretched out a finger and directly unsealed the man's tongue acupuncture point. So now, do you have anything to say? This burly man from a mortal mansion was very stubborn. I don't have anything to say. Don't even think about getting any information out of me. Also, I advise you not to try to read my memories. We Immortal Mansion people have Master's curse mark on us. If anyone tries to read our memories by force, they'll explode on the spot. When that time comes, you'll all die. Explode on the spot? Are you going to add a Thomas full-spin helix into the sky? You dare scare us? Penn snorted and wanted to step forward to teach this man a lesson. But before he could do anything, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal stopped him. Wait! Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal ran his fingers through his hair and carefully examined the back of the man's neck, then sighed. What he said should be true. There are indeed traces of a curse mark on the back of his neck. Dharmaraja frowned. Then, Senior Immortal, what should we do now? We can only get him to confess himself. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at the man on the ground and said, Do people from Immortal Mansion like to refine some strange part of themselves into a magic weapon? And I heard that this man seems to be extremely confident in his own power. Eraser nodded. His power is indeed very strong. Before Lord Dharmaraja could make a move, his eyes were already bleeding from the shock. Dharmaraja felt like he had been shot in the knee again. Could he not bring this up? It was so shameful. Very good. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled inwardly, then got up and patted Dharmaraja on the shoulder. Dharmaraja, it's time for you to avenge this humiliation. Dharmaraja. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Someone, open his eyelids for me. Then, Dharmaraja used the godly thunder inheritance to directly blind his dog eyes. Until he confesses. Chapter 244. Special methods had always been Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's way of interrogation when dealing with special people. Of course, this was a little like private torture, but when dealing with dark forces who like to play tricks behind the scenes, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't think this sort of interrogation method was a big deal at all. There were times when Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that cultivation didn't make everyone understand the big picture. Everyone was at the soul formation stage, but everyone had a different understanding of this realm. The biggest difference was that some people understood more as they lived, while others became more and more clueless. It was very obvious that when the man heard that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had told Dharmaraja to use the godly thunder inheritance, he couldn't stop breaking out in a cold sweat like a waterfall. The man looked at Dharmaraja in shock. You're a descendant of the Thunder Clan? That's right. Dharmaraja nodded. The man from Immortal Mansion, he absolutely never thought that the person standing in front of him now, who looked like a wretched uncle in goggles, would actually be a descendant of the Thunder Clan of the 12 ancient clans. To be honest, when he had met Dharmaraja's eyes earlier, the man from Immortal Mansion had wondered for a split second whether this wretched uncle had acted in the role of a bus idiot or something like that, because his temperament was completely unlike that of a descendant of the famous Thunder Clan. It was simply too different from what he had imagined. Even if you couldn't use 100,000 volts, wouldn't the ideal person be a little fresh meat with a blonde hedgehog's head, a body wreathed in electricity, and an 8-pack abs? The man from Immortal Mansion really couldn't suppress the wild urge to curse in his heart. As it turned out, there were times when a person's dreams really could be shattered. Sheep straddled the man's body. From this angle, she could clearly see the disappointment on the man's face after confirming that he was a descendant of the Thunder Clan. She noticed that the light in his eyes had dimmed considerably. Furthermore, this time, she clearly heard the man from the Immortal Mansion's heart shattering. After all this time, it seems this person is a fan of yours? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal crossed his arms with a funny expression on his face. Dharmaraja was flattered. He actually had a fan? That's normal. He's the only descendant of the Thunder Clan who can use spirit energy to activate the holy relic, the godly thunder inheritance. This should be considered a legend. The Thunder Clan had left behind quite a reputation in the past. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pursed his lips and looked at Dharmaraja as he said, If you continue to work as an electric welder for the Shao family, you'll squander the last bit of your reputation. Hearing this, Dharmaraja's face showed a blushing expression. A long time ago, our ancestors were indebted to the Thunder Clan. Therefore, us juniors have always attached great importance to the Thunder Clan. The man on the ground gritted his teeth and said, "However, I will not easily give in just because the person standing in front of me is a descendant of the Thunder Clan. You have quite a backbone." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed helplessly at the man on the ground. Then he waved his hand. "Never mind. There's no hurry with the interrogation. Let's eat first. Old Senior Wong's broccoli soup must not be missed." Dharmaraja was a little surprised. Didn't you want me to blast him with the innate lightning? In any case, she's a fan of yours. Can you do it?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal laughed. Sure enough, Dharmaraja hesitated. Staring at the man on the ground, he thought carefully for a bit and finally decided to drop the matter. Seeing Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's confident expression, he knew in his heart that the latter had most likely already thought of a countermeasure. Dharmaraja had always felt that in this world where looks were everything, his fans were actually a rare species. It hadn't been easy for him to find one, so it was indeed necessary to take good care of him. If he wasn't a fan, Dharmaraja would have already thought about electrocuting this person until he was medium rare or medium rare. During the meal, Father Wong and Lai Meng Meng didn't come downstairs and were still discussing animatedly in the room. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal directly served the food, and the man from Immortal Mansion was stupefied by his respectful manner. Now that things had come to this, he already couldn't use common sense to think about the situation in this villa, because given the current situation, there didn't seem to be a single normal person here. He clearly couldn't sense any fluctuations of spirit energy from the owner of this villa, but whether it was Great Death Courting Senior or Lightning Dharmaraja, the descendant of the Thunder Clan, they were all extremely respectful to the owner of this villa, and even called him Great Senior. The man deeply suspected that his ability to sense spirit energy was probably broken. During the meal, the man from Immortal Mansion didn't stay idle. Although he was already tied up tightly, he was still thinking of ways to make small moves behind the scenes in an attempt to tip Immortal Mansion off. After having a pleasant lunch with Mother Wong and Grandfather Wong, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal directly carried the man upstairs. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who was nearly 190 centimeters tall, used just one finger to hook the rope and lift the man up as if he were picking up a chicken. He threw the man into Wong Ling's bedroom and then continued with the interrogation. Sitting on the edge of Wong Ling's bed, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal crossed his slender legs and stared lazily at the man in front of him. "Don't waste your energy. Sheep and the others already marked you when you came in. All the fluctuations of your magic artifacts and any communication signals will be cut off by this house, and you won't be able to connect to the outside world at all." There's this kind of operation? Dharmaraja was stunned again. Ever since he had come to the Wong family's villa, Dharmaraja had felt like a little fool and was frightened every now and then. He carefully checked his phone, and sure enough, found that its signal had been blocked. No wonder there hadn't been any calls since the beginning. "I forgot to ask Sheep to set it up for you just now. The next time you come here, you won't be marked," Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said as he looked at Dharmaraja. "Then what about Senior Immortal?" Dharmaraja asked in return. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, "I'm a regular, so I've already set it up." As he said this, Dharmaraja noticed that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was already lying on Ling Junren's bed, completely paralyzed. Furthermore, his elbow was pressing down on Jinka, who was next to the pillow, but Jinka actually didn't care at all. There wasn't even the slightest fluctuation. Dharmaraja was speechless. This was more than just familiar. This was thoroughly familiar. This was Ling Junren's bed, pillow, and sword. Even if he did it 100 more times, Dharmaraja didn't think he would have the courage to lie down so openly and leisurely on Ling Junren's bed. Dharmaraja gave Wong Ling's soft single bed a deep look and subconsciously swallowed. Chapter 245. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked askance at Dharmaraja. out of the corner of his eye as he stared at the bed. Dharmaraja, are you thinking of something disrespectful and wretched? Lightning King, grenade-throwing senior immortal, I advise you not to think too much about Ling Jinren's bed. A few years ago, Ling Jinren and I worked together to capture that ferocious six-fingered zither demon, and we lured him to Ling Jinren's bedroom. Who would have thought that this fellow would actually be unable to resist the temptation of this bed and directly lay down on it? Six-fingered zither devil? On the ground, the man from Immortal Mansion couldn't help sweating. This man's ferocity had been world-famous a few years ago, and the foreign media had even commented that he was a devil who was about to surpass Devil Emperor Guapai. But in the end, the six-fingered zither devil was captured for some unknown reason. Until now, he had been deprived of his spiritual power and was imprisoned in the holy prison. The specific details were not announced to the public. Dharmaraja gulped, and then, grenade-throwing senior immortal sighed. From now on, this six-fingered zither devil won't be able to see his own fingers. Lightning Dharmaraja, are you saying that this zither demon is unlucky? Grenade-throwing senior immortal shook his head. No, that's the literal meaning. Dharmaraja and the man from Immortal Mansion. The moment this six-fingered zither devil was lying on Ling Jinren's bed, Lord Pillow Immortal cut off all of the six fingers he was so proud of. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Lord Pillow Immortal was also enlightened by Brother Ling, so if an outsider wants to lie on this bed, unless Ling Jinren agrees, the outcome will be very tragic. Fuang felt his back drenched in cold sweat, and he abruptly took 2 steps back. Actually, you don't have to be so scared. If you accidentally rub against the bed, Lord Pillow Immortal won't do anything to you. Grenade-throwing senior immortal smiled and waved his hand. Then may I ask, how did you do it, true monarch? Dharmaraja asked curiously. Secret. Grenade-throwing senior immortal squinted and smiled. A year's worth of crispy noodle snacks in exchange for a year's right to lie on the bed. Such a good deal, he definitely wouldn't tell anyone. The bedroom was silent, and the man from Immortal Mansion still had no intention of speaking. But grenade-throwing senior immortal had said before that he had already thought of a way. Thus, only Dharmaraja was left anxiously. True immortal-like to keep people guessing, and this personality had never changed since they first met. After another quarter of an hour or so, grenade-throwing senior immortal finally got up from his paralyzed Gyo position and looked out the window with a smile. He's here, grenade-throwing senior immortal then quickly got up, his white clothes fluttering as he walked. Considering that visitors would ring the doorbell and disturb the seniors in the villa, grenade-throwing senior immortal quickly got up. Therefore, he went downstairs and stood guard at the entrance of the Wang family's small villa. A moment later, an uncle who looked to be in his early 40s walked over from afar with a takeaway bag. It was still the same deep eye socket, the same long scar that extended from his right eye all the way down to his neck. Yo, hello, Boss Tan. Grenade-throwing senior immortal greeted him from a distance. When Boss Tan saw the person who had ordered the takeout, the corners of his mouth straightaway twitched. Why are you here? 800 Li takeaway, and the noodles were burnt. If it hadn't been for 10 bowls of noodles in one go, he wouldn't have come. Boss Tan put the bag in grenade-throwing senior immortal's hands. Here, your 10 big bowls of Laodan pickled cabbage beef noodles. Grenade-throwing senior immortal took the bag, his bright smile still on his face. Boss, why is Midnight Dining Hall delivering takeout at this hour? Business isn't good. Boss Tan spread his hands and said, It's true that the restaurant opens at night, but we have to make good use of the time during the day. I think it's a good idea to deliver takeout. Oh, grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded. Actually, there's something else I wanted you to personally deliver the takeout this time. Boss Tan immediately chuckled. In fact, the moment he saw grenade-throwing senior immortal, he had already had a premonition. Tell me what's up. Boss Tan sighed and asked, The hawthorn seeds I gave you last time didn't grow anything. That shouldn't be the case. He had sent the real thing back then, and the story was also true. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to say goodbye to the past for good and start a new life, Plus, it just so happened that someone wanted to investigate the identity of the maker of the stone ghost mask. Boss Tan felt that he wouldn't have handed over the seeds so easily. No, it's not about the seeds. Grenade Throwing Senior, immortal, shook his head with a smile and moved sideways to make way for the door. Boss Tan, please come with me to take a look. Boss Tan stared at the door with a hesitant expression. To be honest, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal had still doubted his speculation until he had seen Boss Tan. But now that he had seen Boss Tan with his own eyes, he could confirm that Boss Tan's spirit energy attribute was indeed very similar to that of the man from Immortal Mansion inside. In addition, Boss Tan had personally advised him to stay away from Immortal Mansion when he had come to the restaurant for noodles before. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal had reason to believe that the man from Immortal Mansion inside might be related to Boss Tan. Boss Tan was very sharp and seemed to have already sensed something. Although he was downstairs, his eyes were fixed on Wang Ling's bedroom on the second floor. The afternoon light shone on Boss Tan's knife scar, which looked like it had a story behind it. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal remembered that Boss Tan had said it was because he had accidentally tripped during the chaotic battle when he had fled the sect and happened to bump into a holy weapon that was still in operation. This story sounded a little strange and dramatic, but the point was that it was very, very mysterious. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal had always felt that the story behind this knife scar might not be as simple as it sounded. Boston gazed upstairs with a bottomless gaze. All these years, he had been running away from his past. Sure enough, he couldn't escape what was coming. After hesitating for a while, he waved his hand and looked at Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal. Lead the way. When they entered the villa, Grandfather Wang and Mother Wang were still washing the dishes in the kitchen. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal went in to greet them and said that he had brought a friend to participate in the interrogation. The old man was a pretty easygoing person and didn't ask too many questions before directly agreeing. Standing outside the kitchen, Boss Tan was very surprised when he saw Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal's humble attitude as he asked questions and bowed. He didn't know why, but he felt like he was being surrounded by big shots. After that, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal led Boss Tan upstairs. At the bedroom door, Boss Tan raised his eyebrows with his hands clasped behind his back. Is this the place? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal made a sound of agreement. We caught someone from Immortal Mansion. Boss Tan, do you recognize him? Boss Tan nodded silently. As soon as they entered, the sturdy Immortal Mansion man on the ground floor sensed something. He raised his head a little fearfully and happened to bump into Boss Tan's knife scar face. The two of them stared at each other in silence. After a moment, the Immortal Mansion man turned pale with fright and was actually so scared that he directly shrank into a corner. Brother, why are you here? Chapter 246. Although they had already guessed that Boss Tan might be related to this man from Immortal Mansion, neither Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal nor Dharmaraja had expected them to be so close. Bro, little brother? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal blinked, feeling like he was watching a third-rate, melodramatic TV series. Whether it was in terms of build or appearance, Boss Tan and the man on the ground were very different. Boss Tan was of medium build and had obvious muscles, but he wasn't as tall and sturdy as the man on the ground. Looking at the man huddled in the corner, the corners of Boss Tan's mouth twitched visibly, and he rubbed his forehead as if he had a headache. Didn't I tell you to leave back then? Why are you still fooling around there all these years? The man looked a little aggrieved. The master said that as long as I completed one more task, I could be promoted to director level. I was thinking of retiring after I was promoted to director level and getting my pension. Boss Tan was instantly speechless. His little brother was still so naive, believing everything. He even believed nonsense like getting a pension. Boss Tan couldn't help recalling how he had chosen to leave back then when he had recognized the master of Immortal Mansion's stingy nature. Because the master of Immortal Mansion was so stingy that his salary wasn't even as much as his shop. Of course, the master of Immortal Mansion's stinginess was only one of the reasons Boss Tan had left. The main reason was that Immortal Mansion's waters ran too deep. Furthermore, He had long since realized that the master of Immortal Mansion was actually a pervert. "How long has it been since my little brother was caught and brought here?" Boss Tan asked with a sigh. "Less than 2 hours ago," Dharmaraja replied. "If I remember correctly, Immortal Mansion has a fixed schedule for reporting back. Whether the mission succeeds or fails, if you don't report back within the allotted time, it will be considered a mission failure." Boston narrowed his eyes. He knew all too well that once a mission was judged a failure in Immortal Mansion, the person carrying out the mission would very quickly become a target. "Go to the balcony and make a call. The signal is blocked here," Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Boss Tan nodded, and without saying a word, he directly took the phone out of the man's arms. Dragging the man's upper body over the balcony, he pressed the call back button and put on speaker. He stared at the man in front of him. "Do you know what to say?" The man looked aggrieved. "Brother." Boss Tan's expression was very serious as he pressed a hand against the man's head. "Cut the crap. Behave yourself, or I'll crush your head with my scissor legs." The man, soon, a voice came from the other end of the phone. "Hello? Xiao Tan, how was the mission?" The man was silent for a moment and finally answered honestly. "Reporting to the director, I encountered a little trouble, but it's not a big problem." "Oh, do you need backup?" "There's no need for reinforcements. I can handle it myself." "All right, I'll be waiting for you to return victorious." As soon as he said this, Boss Tan hung up the phone and heaved a sigh of relief. "Sorry for the trouble. Let me introduce my younger brother, Tan Xian." "No wonder," Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. "I've always felt that his and Boss Tan's spirit energy attributes are very similar. When you spoke just now, I suddenly felt that even your voices were similar. May I ask if this little brother Tan and Boss Tan are twins?" "Yes, we're twins," Boss Tan said. "Don't you think that his appearance and figure aren't like mine? That's because he cultivates Immortal Mansion's Panwu Immortal Martial Arts. This technique can make up for a lack of innate talent, but the downside is that once you cultivate it, you'll grow taller and taller, change your original appearance, and shorten your lifespan." Boston seemed to be recalling a lot of things. "I've seen with my own eyes people who cultivate this technique for 100 years grow into giants that are dozens of meters tall. When they run, they look like mutated zergs." Mutated zergs? The corners of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortals and Dharmaraja's mouths twitched. "Do you know what happens to these mutated zergs?" Boss Tan looked at his little brother with a meaningful expression. "I've heard from the director that those who cultivate the Panwu Immortal technique have been arranged by the master to enter the immortal abode of Peach Blossom Spring. They've become the most capable subordinates of the immortal abode, and they can obtain everything they want there," Tan Xian replied. "It seems you don't know the situation at all." Boss Tan chuckled, his expression a little sad as he said, "Those who cultivate this technique are indeed sent to a place called Peach Blossom Land in the end, but it's actually a secret execution ground for Immortal Mansion. Anyone who cultivates the Panwu Immortal Martial Arts to the later stage is executed. Furthermore, each of their bodies is a massive body of energy." "How could this be?" Tan Xian was stupefied. He had no idea what was going on at all. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Dharmaraja also broke out in a cold sweat. After a cultivator died, the corpse itself was in fact a massive body of energy. But what did the master of Immortal Mansion need such a massive body of energy for? Unfortunately, I only got to this point in my investigation back then before I chose to leave. I don't know what their ultimate goal is. I had to expend a lot of energy to avoid these guys back then." Boss Tan's expression was clearly a little sad. "Then do you have your own deductions, boss?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. If what Boss Tan said was true, then Immortal Mansion's viciousness was completely beyond his imagination. "I probably have some deductions," Boss Tan continued. "What I know is that the master of Immortal Mansion is actually a spirit sword collector. He has already collected more than 2/3 of the spirit swords on the historical ranking list of cultivation swords. Furthermore, based on the clues I have so far, he probably wants to create a peerless godly sword that can crush all the swords on the list." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly thought of something. "People from Immortal Mansion came to my house to cause trouble before in search of the maker of the stone ghost mask. Could this have something to do with it? It's very likely. Boss Tan nodded. If they want to create a peerless godly sword, they have to find a powerful weaponsmith. Hearing this, Tan Xian felt like he was about to give up on thinking. He hugged his head and curled up in a corner in pain. Senior Immortal, are you going to deal with him? Boss Tan looked at Tan Xian, then turned his head to look at the young man in white in front of him. Perhaps he doesn't know as much about Immortal Mansion as I do. As long as Senior Immortal is willing to let him off the hook, he can tell me whatever he wants to know. I'll definitely tell him everything I know. Since he's your little brother, we can actually discuss what to do next. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied. That's good. Boss Tan exhaled. But Senior Immortal, I have a favor to ask of you first. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. Go ahead, Boss Tan. It's said that Senior Immortal has a lot of strange tricks up his sleeve. Do you have any way to make someone forget the art they cultivate? Boss Tan looked at Tan Xian and said, he hasn't cultivated the Panwu immortal martial arts to a high level, but this art is addictive. Once you cultivate it, it's very easy to become addicted, and it's hard to stop, unless you forget it. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal understood. Indeed, as Boss Tan said, it would indeed be very dangerous to continue cultivating this art. But it was really too difficult to completely erase one's memory. Furthermore, the text of the art would be imprinted in the depths of a person's brain when they cultivated it, which was the hardest thing to forget. Boss Tan, Senior Immortal, do you have any good ideas? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal scratched his head and pointed at Tan Xian's. How about punching him? Boss Tan, Tan Xian, and Dharmaraja. P.S. Tan Siming. Hello everyone, let me introduce you. This is my younger brother, Tan Xian. Chapter 247. Memory loss always happened inadvertently. Even if there was a way to erase a memory, it would only erase an entire memory segment. It was really difficult to extract a memory of a single event and erase it. As expected, it won't work. Boss Tan sighed helplessly. If there's really no other way, we'll have to use force. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal raised his eyebrows. For example? Boss Tan, for example, when he's addicted to martial arts, we can tie him up and stop him from making hand seals. But there's another big problem with this, which is that whenever he's addicted to martial arts, he'll go berserk, and it'll be very difficult to restrain him then. Saying this, Boss Tan's eyes lit up. Unless we have the golden canopy rope. The three auspicious treasures again. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly remembered that he still had the 7-star sword which he had obtained from Ayu, the lady of the castle's right-hand man. Actually, after that, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had asked Little Black to investigate the remaining 2 magic treasures. Currently, he knew that one of the genuine purple gold gourd was in the old devil's hands, but there had been no news on the whereabouts of the golden canopy rope. On the side, listening to their conversation, Tan Xian's eyes were unprecedentedly downcast. If it hadn't been for today's incident, he wouldn't have thought that Immortal Mansion's waters ran so deep. Brother, when I get back, I'll tell them I resign. No, given the current situation, it's safer for you to stay in Immortal Mansion. You can also cooperate with us in our investigation of Immortal Mansion. This bunch of people actually turned you into this. It's better to just get rid of them all. Tan Xian was startled by Tan Siming's gaze. This was the first time he had seen such an expression on his brother's face. Boss Tan's eyes darkened. The most important thing now is to find a way to help you suppress the side effects of the Panwu immortal martial arts. How about we wait for Ling Zhenren to come back and ask him? Dharmaraja suddenly interjected. Ling Zhenren? Boss Tan patted his head as he suddenly remembered. Oh, isn't that the young man who wrote songs in my shop before? He had thought that this young man wasn't simple. Who would have thought that he was actually a big shot? Ling Zhenren has remarkable abilities. He definitely has a way. But we won't know the specifics until he comes back. He's still in military training at school, said Dharmaraja. School military training? Because he had already met Father Wang before, Boss Tan had already guessed that Wang Ling was his student. But when he heard Dharmaraja's words with his own ears, Boss Tan actually still couldn't suppress his shock. This lightning Dharmaraja and great death-courting senior, grenade-throwing senior immortal, in front of him were both famous people in the cultivation circle. For people like them to address Wang Ling as Zhenren and senior, Boss Tan really couldn't imagine why this Ling Zhenren was so obsessed with school. As expected, knowledge was power. Only by studying could one become a big shot. That night, Tan Xian left after having dinner with Boss Tan at the Wang family small villa. The old man warmly received the Tan brothers. It was Boss Tan's first time meeting Grandfather Wang, but even that first meeting was enough to make Boss Tan admire him from the bottom of his heart. In the face of Tan Xian's previous offense and harassment, not only hadn't this Grandfather Wang gotten angry, he had instead returned good for evil. This was the kind of bearing that only a true great senior could have. On the way back to Immortal Mansion, Tan Xian flew on his flying sword, his emotions a little complicated as he gazed at the small pill bottle in his hand. For the time being, grenade-throwing senior Immortal hadn't been able to find a way to suppress his addiction to the Panwu Immortal martial arts, so he had given him this bottle of sleeping pills. For now, stopping cultivating this art and completely cutting off his addiction was the best method he could think of. This bottle of sleeping pills had been personally refined by Immortal Toya. Just half a pill was enough to make a soul formation cultivator sleep for 3 hours, and they wouldn't wake up even if the sky collapsed. The effect of a whole pill was usually 6 hours, which was just enough to balance out the time when the addiction flared up. But relying on sleeping pills wasn't a long-term solution. As a person's realm grew higher, their resistance to the drug would increase. This bottle of sleeping pills would last for half a month at most, after which its efficacy would plummet. Of course, this wasn't the real reason for Tan Xian's complicated feelings. It was because he realized that he had come to the Wang family's small villa today to investigate this family situation. In the end, he had failed and been caught instead. After being taught a lesson by his own big brother, he had then been sent to Immortal Mansion to continue being a spy. As for the master of Immortal Mansion's ultimate goal, it had just been his brother Tan Siming's speculation. Although Tan Xian felt that his speculation was pretty close, he still needed to work hard to gather some concrete evidence to prove his ultimate goal. Tan Xian was surprised to find that he had actually become the legendary snitch. Sometimes coincidence is a wonderful thing because you never know what's going to happen next. What happened next? Even Wang Ling, who knew the fate profiling spell and had helped Dopey Guo predict his fate back then. However, he couldn't predict his own fate. It was June 20th on Monday in the 9th week of the semester. The joint military training exercise for the 6 schools had ended, and the school had specially set aside this day for the students to relieve their fatigue and digest the knowledge they had learned during the military training. To be honest, Wang Ling hadn't gained much from this military training, since he had been planning to fish in troubled waters from the very beginning. Although Dopey Guo had suffered from Mother Wan's Fan Bing Bing before the military training, he was the one who had benefited the most from it. All the famous schools had offered him an olive branch, and even a spirit sword product company had invited him to be their spokesperson. His future career could be said to be bright. Dopey Guo had once said that his dream was to open the largest fresh produce market in the country. Whether it was in terms of scale or reputation, it had to be bigger than his family's pet shop. At that time, Wang Ling had indeed predicted Dopey Guo's fate. According to the results of his prediction, Dopey Guo's dream would come true in 500 years. Now, Wang Ling finally understood. It turned out that this military training was the source of all evil. That night, when Wang Ling returned to his bedroom in the Wang family's small villa, he found traces of Jinka's attack. Before he had left, he had put Jinka under his pillow, and when he came back, he found Jinka by his pillow. Sure enough, in the 2 days he had been gone, someone had still come looking for trouble. Wang Ling suddenly felt that he had made the right decision to leave Jinka at the villa back then. Ling Ling, come down and eat first. Downstairs, Mother Wang had already prepared dinner. Wang Ling put Jinka down again and went downstairs. It was only then that he realized that Loopy Toad hadn't followed him up just now. That was because when Loopy Toad was halfway down the stairs, the old man had stopped it and rubbed its face. As he rubbed Loopy Toad's little fat face, the old man frowned and muttered in his heart, "Why has this child lost weight?" Chapter 248. Ever since Loopy Toad had thoroughly accepted its fate of becoming a dog, it could be said that it had become more and more integrated into modern cultivation life. Starting from number 60 high, it had slowly integrated into the Wong family's life. The old man only knew that Loopy Toad had been a demon king before, but he had never mentioned its original identity in front of Loopy Toad. Everyone was curious, but the old man was well aware that as a former demon king, Loopy Toad also had its own pride. The past was the past, and the old man now only regarded Loopy Toad as a member of the Wong family. It was enough to know that it was a loyal dog. In the Wong family, apart from its little masterling, Loopy Toad was closest to Grandfather Wong. Teacher Pan had borrowed Loopy Toad to participate in military training, and after a few days, it looked like it had lost a lot of weight, which actually made the old man's heart ache. Actually, it wasn't that Loopy Toad had lost weight, but that its cultivation had advanced, and its body looked more refined than before, which was why it had the illusion of thinness. But the old man didn't understand this. Seeing that Loopy Toad had lost weight, he began to rack his brains to come up with nutritious meals for it to become stronger, full of confidence that Loopy Toad would become a sturdy toad. That night, while Wong Ling was still eating, the old man had already prepared an extra meal for Loopy Toad. Wong Ling saw the old man tossing a spoon around in the kitchen with a smile on his face as he looked at Loopy Toad at his feet. "I'm already so old. How long do you think I can live?" Loopy Toad suddenly raised its head and looked at the old man a little suspiciously, not knowing why he had suddenly asked such a sad question. It didn't know how to predict fate, but it knew a little about physiognomy. Loopy Toad was well aware that it wouldn't be a problem for the old man to live to 100 years old. "Even if I can live to 90, that's less than 30 years. You're a demon king and you know how to cultivate, so you should be able to live longer than me, right?" The old man smiled foolishly and crouched down to rub Loopy Toad's head. "No matter how long I can stay with you in the future, or who you'll be guarding the door for in the future, right now, you're my dog." Wong Ling watched this scene from the other side of the door. He saw tears in Loopy Toad's eyes. After dinner, it was time for the old man to watch a drama. Thanks to Mother Wong's recommendation, the old man had watched an entire episode of The Legend of True Rings. Then, under Father Wong's careful guidance, he had finally learned the search function for TV dramas and was able to search for the ones he was interested in. Recently, the old man had been watching a large-scale youth food inspirational TV series, The Spicy Year of Green Onions. This TV series told the story of a young chef from a family of chefs, his childhood sweetheart, his little sister, and his warm boyfriend, who were fighting together for the god of cookery. They were searching for the legendary divine onions that could elevate the freshness of their dishes to the highest level. In order to find the legendary divine onion, the three of them went through many trials and tribulations. In the end, the main character's sister sacrificed her ancestral white lotus to lure the divine onion out. Just as the divine onion was about to suck the white lotus dry, the main character and his best friend made a decisive move and killed the divine onion. In the end, the three of them teamed up and became top chefs. Holding Loopy Toad, the old man stroked its fur with one hand and wiped his tears with the other. When he had watched The Legend of True Rings before, he hadn't cried like this. Now, however, he was purely moved by the main character's arduous struggle for his dream of becoming a god of cookery, and he resonated with him in a wonderful way. He couldn't help sighing emotionally in his heart. This was King Youth. On the other hand, Loopy Toad stared blankly at the TV, clearly stunned by the plot of the TV series. Loopy Toad gave up on thinking. When Loopy Toad returned to its room at 8 o'clock in the evening, it found Little Master Ling cleaning Jinka's sword. Jinka's cleaning method was completely different from other spirit swords. It couldn't come into contact with water or be rubbed with spirit sand. as that would destroy the patterns on the sword. In essence, Jinka was still a peachwood sword, so Wang Ling had to be even more careful when he took care of it. It had been a long time since Wang Ling had given Jinka such a meticulous cleaning. He needed to attach his spirit energy to the spirit soil, specially used to clean wooden swords, and then cover every corner of Jinka's sword like a facial mask. After the spirit soil had completely dried up, Wang Ling would peel it off bit by bit. This job looked very simple, but it was meticulous work, so Wang Ling's expression was especially solemn each time he cleaned Jinka's body. This was probably the most serious expression Loopy Toad had seen Wang Ling apart from when he was studying. Loopy Toad stared at Wang Ling, and for some reason, it felt a little sleepy in this silence. Very quickly, it felt like its eyelids couldn't take it anymore. In its dream, Loopy Toad realized that it was actually watching from God's perspective. It dreamed of an unfamiliar fat man. The fat man's mouth was full of blood, and he was tied to an iron pillar. In front of the iron pillar stood a red-clothed Taoist. The Taoist in red sneered, and with a flick of his fingers, the spirit energy behind him instantly transformed into hundreds of magic swords which abruptly pierced the fat man's chest. In the next moment, the scene before his eyes changed. Loopy Toad saw the Taoist in red throw all these hundreds of blood-stained magic swords into a furnace. What on earth did this dream mean? Loopy Toad was a little stupefied from its omniscient view as it heard the Taoist in red laugh wildly after throwing all the magic swords into the furnace. Following this laughter, Loopy Toad abruptly woke up from its dream. It got up abruptly, as if it had just had a nightmare. In front of it, little Masterling was still cleaning Jinka's sword. Loopy Toad looked at the alarm clock hanging on the wall. The time was fixed at 8:05. This seemingly long and fragmented dream had actually lasted only 5 minutes. What on earth was going on? A few drops of cold sweat trickled down Loopy Toad's forehead. Even though it was usually in the habit of sleeping, it rarely dreamed. Could it be this was the Toad Clan's omen dream? Suddenly, Loopy Toad's eyes widened. It recalled the legend of the Toad Clan. Toads were lazy by nature and loved to sleep, but they rarely dreamed when they slept. Dreams were omens. Although Loopy Toad had now become a dog, its soul was essentially that of a toad. But this dream was really too strange. From beginning to end, the dream was fragmented and anticlimactic, and the person it dreamt of was someone it had never met before. You King Omen Dream, at least tell me the story. It wasn't like they were playing Detective Conan right now. Did they have to incorporate a puzzle-solving element into the dream? Loopy Toad lay on the ground and pulled at its ears, suddenly feeling a little pain in its head. Given the current situation, it felt that for the time being, its IQ wouldn't be able to break through the truth of the dream. Chapter 249. Loopy Toad felt that its prophetic dream was a little like a pipe dream. However, the difference was that the legendary Golden Millet dream was a beautiful dream of enjoying a lifetime of glory, splendor, and wealth. When they woke up, even the rice hadn't been cooked. But Loopy Toad couldn't tell what was so special about its dream. Loopy Toad had no idea who that maniac in the dream with hundreds of magic swords behind him was, or who that fatty whose heart had been pierced by 100 swords was. Furthermore, Loopy Toad noticed that these people's faces were becoming more and more blurry in its mind. In its dream, these people's faces had clearly been censored in high definition, but after turning its head, they were just shadows in its mind. Loopy Toad scratched its dog head and looked a little irritated. It wanted to tell little Master Ling about this, but Wang Ling was still busy and had no time to pay attention to it. After thinking about it, Loopy Toad decided to first record what it had dreamed in its human observation diary, in case it forgot it later. After Wang Ling helped Jinka clean up, he found that Loopy Toad had already fallen asleep at the foot of the bed. Flipping through the study materials, he spent 2 minutes reviewing them, and another 3 to preview the upcoming course before he was ready to rest. After the military training, the pace of life slowed down again, and he returned to his favorite and most familiar pace. He always felt that collective life was not very suitable for him, but he also felt that it was not as bad as he imagined. However, even though the pace had slowed down, the things that he had to deal with had not decreased at all. Wang Ling already knew about Boss Tan, and had always felt that the master of Immortal Mansion's identity wasn't simple. At the very least, he was the most difficult person Wang Ling had encountered so far, and was even more troublesome than the old devil. General, he had been able to successfully capture the old devil this time purely because the old devil hadn't yet recovered to his peak. Another reason was that this devil emperor was, after all, an upright man. He was far less cunning than the master of Immortal Mansion. When that young man from Immortal Mansion who had appeared under the hawthorn tree had come to cause trouble, Wang Ling remembered that he had left a spirit energy signal on his abyss avoidance sword. But until now, there had been no response. He didn't know whether this signal had been detected or not. As a dark force, the greatest taboo was for the location of their sect to be exposed. One thing was certain. The master of Immortal Mansion was definitely on guard against this. Now, they could only wait for further news from Boss Tan's younger brother, Tan Xian. At the desk, Wang Ling looked at Jinka and couldn't help raising his eyebrows. He didn't know whether the master of Immortal Mansion's ultimate goal was to forge a peerless divine sword. But there was one thing he could be sure of. This time, it must be June 21st, the 9th Tuesday of the semester. After school that day, Sheep appeared punctually in an alley next to number 60 high school and leaned against the wall, waiting for Wang Ling. Grenade-throwing senior Immortal had originally been the one to take her paint today, but because he had to help reconstruct the bodies of the delivery men from last time, he didn't have the time at all, so Wang Ling had taken Sheep instead. Just before school ended, Wang Ling received an address from Grenade-throwing senior Immortal. The owner of this magic weapon shop was surnamed Luo, and he was a skilled smith himself. He had already cared for Sheep once before, so it should be said that he was very familiar with it. There was no need to worry about the technique. Moreover, Boss Luo was actually one of them. It was just that Boss Luo didn't like to chat online, so he didn't join the chat group. It was also Boss Luo who had repaired the pill furnaces that Immortal Toya had blown up previously. As soon as Wang Ling stepped out of the school gate, he could already sense Sheep's location. When he turned into the alley, he saw that Sheep was actually surrounded by a group of delinquents. These delinquents had dyed hair, nose rings and earrings, and some of them even had gold chains around their necks. Those who didn't know better would think that they were rappers who had come out of China's C-Ha variety show. Sheep's small body was surrounded in the middle of this group of delinquents. She was only 1.4 meters tall, shorter than Jinka. She was wearing a small gray windbreaker, and anyone who saw her fair and cute little face would want to take a bite out of it. At that moment, Sheep was forced to lean against the wall, her face expressionless. Big brother, she looks like she's still a kid. Don't you know that there's a saying that Lolas have the body of a mature sister? This kind of kid is more fun to play with. The tattooed man with the 2 gold chains around his neck was breathing heavily. He looked Sheep up and down and was a little excited. Little friend, are you lost? Come with Big Brother. Big Brother will buy you a lollipop. I'll take you to play games. Looking at this scene from a distance, Wang Ling narrowed his eyes, but didn't intend to intervene. Reality proved that in the face of these hooligans and delinquents, the more taciturn you were, the more the other party would take advantage of you. After just a few words of provocation, the tattooed man with the gold chain straightaway decided to make a move. He stared at Sheep's bun and stretched out his hand. The bun was really too cute, and he couldn't help but want to pinch it. Unfortunately, as soon as his fingers got close, Sheep straightaway dodged to the side, causing him to grab nothing but air. Oh, you're pretty agile. The golden-chained delinquent hadn't expected this little Lolita to move so quickly. Furthermore, after his provocation just now, the little Lolita's eyebrows were completely furrowed and her cheeks were puffed out slightly. She already looked a little angry. TSK, this was the kind of temper he liked. The golden-chained delinquent chuckled, the expression on his face becoming even more vulgar as he directly stretched out his hand to grab Sheep. But Sheep's movements were really too fast, She moved like the wind. She was clearly just dodging left and right, but such a small distance actually created afterimages. The delinquent's jaws dropped in shock, because this definitely wasn't a speed that a normal human could produce. This little Lolita's movements were really too fast. It was impossible to catch her with the naked eye. It was obvious that she was a cultivator, but she was clearly just a child. The delinquents didn't dare believe the scene in front of them. Some of them wanted to dissuade the golden chain delinquent, but unfortunately, the golden chain delinquent lost his temper. Every time, he was so close to catching her. I catch. I catch. I still catch. I catch. I catch. However, every attack was dodged by Sheep by the side. 5 minutes later, the golden chain delinquent was so tired that he couldn't move anymore and was gasping for breath with his hands on his knees. Bean-sized beads of sweat fell to the ground as he stared at Sheep and wiped it away, completely giving up on resisting. "Ew. You can go. Consider yourself lucky." Sheep raised her eyebrows and snorted, then walked out of the crowd of delinquents unscathed. Before she left, she tilted her head and cast a sidelong glance at the golden chain delinquent. "It's only been 5 minutes, and you're already done. Your endurance is really bad." After saying that, Sheep walked toward Wang Ling without looking back. Chapter 250. It was obvious that this golden chain delinquent had been poked in his sore spot by Sheep. He knelt on the ground and swore. "There was once a cute Lolita in front of me, but I didn't cherish her. When I lost her, it was too late for regrets. There's nothing more painful than this in the world. If God could give me another chance, he would say, never, ever play jumping left and right with a Lolita." The reason why Sheep had chosen to meet Wang Ling in the alley was that he liked to keep a low profile. But when Wang Ling took Sheep out of the alley, they still attracted a lot of attention. Sheep's pink hair buns formed a sharp contrast with her little gray windbreaker, which was really too eye-catching. She obediently followed behind Wang Ling, maintaining a distance of about 10 feet between them. Thus, when he took Sheep out, Wang Ling felt as if someone was watching him. If that was the case, he wouldn't be able to use teleportation, because he would definitely be discovered. Furthermore, he was still wearing his school uniform. If someone discovered his teleportation, Wang Ling felt that it would make the headlines tomorrow. A certain number 60 high school student could actually teleport. Was this a distortion of human nature or a loss of morals? So, in the end, Wang Ling chose to take Sheep to Boss Luo's shop on the subway. After passing through the long overpass, which faced number 60 high school's Qingyun Road Line 1 subway, Wang Ling calculated that there were 8 stops in total between here and Wuyang Road. Since the founding of Huaxiao Nation, subway routes had crisscrossed each other, forming a dense and complex network that ran through the entire underground space like a spider's web. Although there were still many cultivators who chose to fly their swords to wherever they wanted to go, they had to pay a toll, and from time to time, they would be stopped to verify their personal information. In contrast, people only needed to go through a security check when they entered the station on the subway. Although it was slower than flying a sword, there were a lot fewer procedures and unnecessary troubles. The interior space of the subway cars had now been expanded using space expansion technology, so everyone could find a place to sit, and it was no longer a crowded scene. When Wang Ling entered the subway, he saw all kinds of people, ordinary office workers with briefcases, as well as cultivators in strange clothes who exuded spirit energy. In order to determine whether a person was a cultivator or not, the most direct and reliable method was always through the perception of the soul sense, because you would never know whether a person wearing an ancient costume standing in front of you was a cultivator or a cosplayer. Ordinary people couldn't see the magic treasures that cultivators carried with them with their naked eyes, but that didn't mean they weren't dangerous. Thus, cultivators were restricted from carrying spirit swords and magic treasures when they entered the station. They had to be stored in storage bags and weren't allowed to be taken out or used. In the subway, there was a spatial magic treasure that could detect signals. Once a fluctuation was detected, A group of subway attendants would appear in front like the Red Guards. Wang Ling led Sheep through the emergency exit. Looking back, he was surprised to see an acquaintance. It was Li Miaojin, Immortal Toya's disciple and Director Li, whom he had met at Second Hospital back then. Director Li was blocked by 2 subway security personnel at the security checkpoint, and the expression on his face was a little awkward. Watching from a distance, Wang Ling was surprised to find that Director Li's destination was actually also Boss Luo's place. Today, he was going to pick up a sword. Previously, he had left an immortal sword at Boss Luo's place for maintenance. He had originally planned to take the subway to pick it up, and when he got the spirit sword, he would fly the patient's urine sample to the branch hospital. In the end, he had unexpectedly been stopped at the subway security checkpoint. A security officer pointed at the glass bottle that Director Li was carrying. "Sir, what is that yellow thing in your glass bottle?" As the director of the hospital, Director Li had the obligation to protect the patient's privacy, so he refused to answer with a strong sense of righteousness. "I'm sorry, I can't tell you. Is this a poisonous and harmful substance?" The security personnel frowned and stared at Director Li with vigilance. Director Li, "Of course not, security officer. If not, I'll treat you to a sip." Director Li, in the end, Wang Ling didn't choose to get involved in this mess. Shanghai City subway security had always been very strict. Now that Director Li had been caught, he probably wouldn't be able to get out for another hour or so. The worst thing was that Director Li had come out in plain clothes this time. He wasn't wearing a white coat and didn't even have a work ID. It would be strange if he wasn't treated as a suspicious person when he was stopped with a bottle of an unknown yellow liquid. It just so happened that it was the evening rush hour after school, and today's subway traffic was as high as usual. Although there was no need to worry about not having a seat on the subway, the platform outside was still a little crowded. Sheep followed Wang Ling obediently. It was too crowded nearby, which made her feel a little uncomfortable, so she took the initiative to step forward and hold one of Wang Ling's fingers with her small hand. Wang Ling was blank, but when he saw the huge flow of passengers nearby, he let Sheep lead him. Sheep looked around curiously, blinking her eyes the whole way. Holding Sheep's hand, Wang Ling stood in front of the platform and waited for the subway. He could feel a lot of gazes in his direction, but he was sure that they weren't looking at him. They were all looking at Sheep. Anyone who saw a cute girl who looked like a porcelain doll couldn't help but take a second look. An old auntie stood behind Wang Ling. After staring at Sheep for a long time, she couldn't take it anymore and took the initiative to talk to Wang Ling. "Young man, are you taking your sister out to play?" Wang Ling was silent, then nodded his head. The auntie crouched down and stared at Sheep. The more she looked at her, the more she liked her. Her heart itched uncontrollably, and she wanted to pinch Sheep's face, but was a little embarrassed. "Ah, your sister is so cute. Is she your biological sister?" Wang Ling could only continue to nod. He didn't really want to talk to this Annie in front of him, but unfortunately, the moment she saw Sheep, she completely lost her mind. Older people always had a different kind of affection for children. "Your sister is so cute, and you're so handsome. Your mother must be a great beauty." As they chatted, the Annie took the opportunity to pinch Sheep's bun head. Surprisingly, Sheep didn't resist. In fact, it was Sheep who was thinking. She felt that since she had been personally enlightened by Little Master Ling, her relationship with him should be even deeper than that of a sister. So all of a sudden, Sheep raised her head and looked at the Annie in front of her with a serious expression. "Annie, I'm actually not his sister." Both Wang Ling and the Annie looked at Sheep in horror. She pointed at Wang Ling. "He's my dad." Wang Ling, Auntie, accompanied by the roar of the subway. The two of them were instantly thrown into confusion. Chapter 251. As soon as the subway doors opened, Wang Ling directly grabbed Sheep's hand and ran inside. The Annie in front of the platform was so shocked by Sheep's words that she was so stunned that she actually forgot to get on the train. By the time she came back to her senses, the train on Line 1 had already sped off with the sound of the police siren closing the doors in the subway workshop. Wang Ling held Sheep's hand with a slightly helpless expression on his face. Actually, there was nothing wrong with Sheep's understanding, but there were times when randomly calling someone dad without warning could really scare people into pissing their pants. Wang Ling didn't understand how a pure virgin like him, who was as white as a sheet of paper, could suddenly become a father. Actually, Sheep couldn't be blamed for this situation because no one had ever explained things to her in the Wang family's small villa. Because Sheep was young, Pen and Eraser had worked together with all the gremlins in the Wang family's small villa to set up a rule that forbade telling dirty jokes in front of Sheep. Over time, this bunch of gremlins who talked nonsense every time they opened their mouths didn't really know how to talk to Sheep anymore. Wang Ling felt that he should find an opportunity in the future to give Sheep a good explanation and popularize some necessary knowledge so as not to cause unnecessary trouble again. Boss Luo's shop was located at number 300 Wuyang Road in the old district of Songhai City. This was an old street with a very long history. Wang Ling had once heard people say that the reason this street was named Wuyang Road was because a venerable immortal Wuyang once had a mansion here. Some people said that this entire mansion had been built from the legendary divine Wuyang tree. In ancient times, the divine Wuyang tree had been a divine tree that could grow endlessly and reach the heavens. However, it was a pity that the immeasurable tree, which was recorded in history, had been destroyed by a few almighty beings during a war between nations. Even now, an old painting of the old mansion was still circulating online, and Wang Ling had seen it before. But that old painting was really too old, and Wang Ling couldn't judge the authenticity of the old mansion from it. But the one thing he could be sure of was that this old mansion was definitely no longer on Wuyang Road back when Huaxiao Nation had just been founded. All the major streets had been renovated, and rumor had it that this old residence left behind by immortal Emperor Immeasurable had died at the hands of a demolition team. Following the address, Wang Ling arrived at the door of a shop called Fatty Luo Metal. The style of the buildings on the Immeasurable Road was similar. They were all antique and didn't have any landmarks. He could only follow the house number to find the place he wanted to go. After the demolition team accidentally demolished the old house left behind by the immeasurable immortal, the government had been doing repair work. Later, they simply changed the entire immeasurable road into a street block. They also erected a statue of the immeasurable immortal at the end of the street, with a personal profile of the immeasurable immortal written under the statue. Then, the entire road inexplicably turned into the former residence of the immortal sovereign Immeasurable. Wang Ling seriously suspected that the person who had written the introduction probably didn't even know who venerated immortal Amitabha was. When Wang Ling took Sheep to the door of the shop, he noticed that the threshold of Boss Luo's shop was unusually high. It was more than half a meter high. He crossed the threshold with Sheep in his arms. As soon as he entered, he saw a fat man with a pot belly and a white sweatshirt and baggy pants leaning back in a bamboo chair, fanning himself with a palm leaf fan and a pipe in his mouth. Be careful when you enter. Although the threshold of our shop is made of wood, it's very valuable. Do you know the immeasurable wood? The last piece of immeasurable wood in the world is right here. Sensing that someone had entered the shop, Fatty Luo fanned himself and spoke without even looking. Seeing that the person hadn't responded for a long time, Fatty Luo opened his eyes slightly to take a look and immediately jumped out of his chair in shock. So, it's Ling Jinren. My apologies. Fatty Luo had never seen Wang Ling before, but he had seen Sheep before. He knew that the rumored Ling Jinren had brought Sheep here for a maintenance today, so he could deduce the identity of this youngster from Sheep. Because of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's crazy support for Wang Ling, the people in the chat group were very respectful of Wang Ling. Although Fatty Luo wasn't in the group, he was still a member. When the people in the chat group came to him for maintenance on their magic artifacts, they would more or less mention some of Ling Jinren's glorious deeds to him. It was a good thing that Wang Ling wasn't in the habit of casually bragging about his friends to others. Otherwise, this would be the legendary mutual commercial bragging. Today was the first time Fatty Luo and Wang Ling met. Judging from his attire, he was a rather casual fatty, but at first glance, Wang Ling didn't find him annoying at all. On the contrary, he felt that he was quite amiable. Fatty Luo fumbled around in his underpants for a long time, and finally found a slightly yellowed business card in another pair of underpants hanging on a bamboo chair. He handed it to Wang Ling. "Ling Zhenren, this is my business card. If you need me for anything in the future, give me a call in advance." Wang Ling looked at the introduction on the business card. Fatty Luo Metal Shop Manager, Luo Chuang. After putting the business card away, Wang Ling began to carefully size up Fatty Luo's shop. It actually wasn't very big. There was a wooden counter at the entrance, and next to it was a lounge chair that Fatty Luo used to rest on. On either side of the counter were two large wooden cabinets that looked very heavy. Each wooden cabinet was densely packed with hundreds of drawers. At first glance, it looked a little like the structure of an old traditional Chinese medicine shop that specialized in treating psoriasis. "The shop is a little messy. Ling Zhenren, don't mind it." Seeing Wang Ling's expression, Fatty Luo chuckled. "The cabinet on the left contains magic artifacts that have already been maintained. They're waiting for customers to pick them up. The cabinets on the right are still being maintained and repaired, and they have serial numbers on them. Every day, I'll fix a few of them according to the numbers." Hearing this, Wang Ling couldn't help raising his eyebrows. He hadn't expected Fatty Luo, who looked like a big, burly man, to be such a meticulous person. "Grenade throwing and I have known each other for a long time, and we're all brothers. Before Ling Zhenren came, grenade throwing specially called me, so there's no need to line up." Fatty Luo waved his palm leaf fan and smiled. His eyes were very small, only the size of mung beans. When he smiled, they became slits, and his eyeballs couldn't even be seen. "Will it take long?" Wang Ling asked telepathically without opening his mouth. "Not long, not long. Ling Zhenren, please sit here for a moment. I'll bring sheep into the inner room for repairs. It'll be ready soon." Looking at his watch, Fatty Luo beckoned sheep into the inner room. When they reached the inner room, Fatty Luo suddenly flipped his hand over and pulled open a drawer on the counter. "I prepared some snacks in this drawer. If Ling Zhenren doesn't mind, feel free to try them." "Snacks?" Wang Ling walked closer to take a look. Good heavens, this entire drawer was filled with crispy noodle snacks of various flavors. Chapter 252. Wang Ling's first impression of Fatty Luo was that he was lazy on the outside, gentle on the inside, observant and enthusiastic. To be honest, Wang Ling was a little surprised to see this drawer full of crispy noodle snacks. He realized that although Fatty Luo didn't go into the chat group, he didn't receive any less information than the others. He even knew exactly what Wang Ling liked to eat. And the most important thing was that Fatty Luo was very strong. Wang Ling had noticed this as soon as he entered the shop. Although Fatty Luo's aura was well concealed, it still couldn't escape Wang Ling's perception. If a true expert wanted to know the depth of another person's realm, they couldn't just release their aura. Often, when the other party's aura was concealed, it was possible to accurately determine the other party's realm and strength through perception and formula calculations. And it was very obvious that Fatty Luo was a hidden expert. If Dharmarajas without the godly thunder inheritance were used as a unit of measurement, Fatty Luo's strength was equivalent to that of 1.5 Dharmarajas. Wang Ling didn't have to wait long outside the shop before Fatty Luo came out with sheep. After a series of maintenance and repairs, Sheep's face was glowing. Her pink hair was even more vibrant than before, and the two little buns in her hair were as soft and adorable as puddings. Her originally fair little face was now glowing. This time, I gave her a new layer of durable paint and spirit wax. She's too fast, and the materials used for the maintenance couldn't keep up with the constant consumption at her absolute speed. I believe that after this maintenance, she should last longer than before, Luo Chuang said. Wang Ling nodded and thanked him. Brother Grenade Throwing has a card in my shop, and called me earlier to tell me that he'll pay for the maintenance. We're all brothers, and it's the first time I've met Ling Zhenren, so I'll let him off the hook. Although the raw materials for my lacquer and wax aren't cheap, it's still affordable for my brothers to use." Fatty Luo waved his palm leaf fan and said with a smile, "It wasn't easy for Ling Zhenren to come here this time, so I have a request." "Tell me about it." Wang Ling raised his eyebrows and directly spoke telepathically. His expression was very relaxed, because he had already known that things wouldn't be so simple. This fatty looked harmless, but his mind was quite meticulous. An enemy like this would be quite scary. Fatty Luo chuckled, the fat on his face wrinkling up like a meat bun. "This hardware shop has been passed down from my ancestors. In addition to running it and doing some magic artifact repair and maintenance work, Ling Zhenren should have heard that I'm also a smith." Fatty Luo laughed mischievously. Fatty Luo's eyes lit up. Wang Ling nodded. Of course he knew of Fatty Luo's identity as a smith. Even if grenade throwing hadn't told him, he could see it from the details. Because of refining all year round, a refiner's physique was usually very strong. Although Fatty Luo had some fat on his face, under the white shirt, there were actually pieces of exquisite muscle. Ling Zi, Chuang, and Ling Zs Ling King, and Ling Chun, Fatty Ling smiled. I Fatty Yang said, I say you on you and Yuan is say Ling said I of the Chin I S Ling honest I Ling I very I honest that Ling. Oh, so he wanted to see Jinka. Spirit light directly flashed in Wang Ling's hand, and then Fatty Luo saw a peach with sword 1 meter and 20 centimeters long appear steadily in his hand. Actually, letting someone see one's personal spirit sword was quite a private matter. Fatty Luo had thought that Wang Ling would refuse. After all, this was their first meeting, but Wang Ling's attitude was astonishingly straightforward. Then, Fatty Luo stared blankly at Jinka. He felt that he couldn't move his eyes away. Although it was just a peach with sword, the patterns on it were impeccably exquisite. Fatty Luo couldn't help stretching out his hand, but before he could touch Jinka's blade, he could already feel the invisible sword chi lingering around the wooden sword. It has its own protective sword chi? Fatty Luo turned pale with shock. He had come into contact with countless spirit swords, but had never seen one that could continuously produce protective sword chi without its owner's spirit energy activating it. Could this be the legendary, immortal, move, machine? Fatty Luo's hand paused in midair. In that moment, the fat on his face trembled, and his heart was filled with unprecedented excitement. "Ling Zhenren, can you put the sword on the sword tray on counter?" Fatty Luo was extremely excited as he wiped away his tears and asked Wang Ling. Wang Ling nodded and put Jinka on the sword tray. Fatty Luo didn't dare directly touch Jinka, which had its own protective sword chi. Instead, after Wang Ling put Jinka on the sword tray, he put down the palm leaf fan in his hand, put on a pair of white gloves, and lit the incense burner on the side. The incense in this incense burner has the effect of soothing a sword spirit. It was given to me by a friend of mine, whose family makes incense for generations. His surname is Gu, and I'll introduce him to Ling Zhenren when I have the chance. In short, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Fatty Luo put the lid on the incense burner and looked at Wang Ling gratefully. Then, he stood respectfully in front of Jinka and bowed to him. "I've offended Lord Jinka." Wang Ling saw Fatty Luo's Adam's apple roll up and down as he slowly touched the sword. Fatty Luo hadn't felt this way in a very long time. He had seen countless spirit swords and magic weapons in this world, but this was the first time in 100 years that he had seen a spirit sword that had instantly stunned him with just one look. "Good sword." Luo Peng held Jinka in admiration. He did his best to restrain his excitement and prevent his hands from trembling too much. Holding up his miniature magnifying glass, he looked at the sword from tip to hilt for a very long time, as if he was examining a beautiful object. After looking at it for a full 5 minutes, Fatty Luo put Jinka back on the sword tray and sighed deeply. As the rumors say, Lord Jinka's sword is perfect and impeccable. There's almost no flaw to be found. If you insist on a flaw, perhaps there's a fly in the ointment. Wang Ling couldn't help raising his head curiously at Fatty Luo's words. "May I ask Ling Jinren if Lord Jinka has a scabbard?" Fatty Luo took off his white gloves and habitually picked up his palm leaf fan and slowly fanned himself. The perfection of a sword isn't just in the sword itself. The scabbard is also a very important part. If the sword is the soul, then the scabbard is the flesh. Lord Jinka's body is constantly protected by sword chi, but without the protection of a scabbard, there will definitely be drawbacks in the future. Scabbard, when Fatty Luo said this, Wang Ling already remembered everything. Actually, when Father Wang had bought Jinka, he had a scabbard. But at that time, his hand had been itchy, and he had directly crushed the scabbard. So at that time, only Jinka's original body had survived. Chapter 253. It wasn't that Jinka didn't have a scabbard, but that Wang Ling had crushed it when he was a child. There was a mysterious substance in Jinka's blade that Wang Ling still hadn't been able to see through to this day, and it had an important effect on restricting Wang Ling. But this substance was different from the special substance in the Dao Talisman seal that Wang Ming had given him. It wasn't the kind of thing that would make Wang Ling feel powerless upon contact. This peachwood sword was just a street item that Father Wang had picked up from a flower and bird market, and Wang Ling still hadn't clearly investigated its origin. Back then, Jinka had actually been born as a sword spirit 6 years ago, when the gate between worlds had first descended. There had been a time when Wang Ling had even wondered if Jinka had something to do with the gate between worlds. But later he realized that it had just been a coincidence. Because Jinka's sword chi was too righteous and didn't have the slightest bit of evil in it. It could be hung over a bedside table to ward off evil, and it could be lifted to slay demons and behead devils. Wang Ling suspected that Jinka had been born after absorbing the essence of socialist core values. Thinking about it carefully, Wang Ling felt that this was the first time he had noticed the scabbard. Because Wang Ling had crushed Jinka's scabbard when he was very young, he hadn't paid any attention to it at all. Even when he usually helped Jinka clean the blade, he hadn't noticed it. So when he heard Fatty Luo's words, Wang Ling stared at Jinka on the sword hilt and pondered deeply. As Fatty Luo said, it went without saying that a scabbard was a great help to his sword. Not every sword could automatically generate protective sword chi like Jinka could. In the absence of a scabbard, more spirit swords would be corroded. Although Jinka had protective sword chi, that didn't mean that the scabbard wasn't important. The sword itself accounted for 70% of spirit sword's overall power, while the scabbard accounted for 30%. When the two were combined, a spirit sword's power could be maximized. Lord Jinka's body is already very powerful. If you can find a suitable scabbard for him, he'll become a truly peerless godly sword with extraordinary power. Fatty Luo looked at Jinka and sighed regretfully. Waving his palm leaf fan, he looked at Wang Ling and wanted to say something, but in the end he opened his mouth and didn't say anything. Fatty Luo looked at the time and realized that it was still quite early. Wang Ling had come over right after school with sheep, and including the time spent on the road, it had taken him less than an hour to finish the care. After a round of maintenance, Sheep was clearly in much better spirits than before, and she blinked curiously as she sized up Fatty Luo's shop. Apart from the magic treasures already in the cabinets on the left and right, there were also some magic treasures from Fatty Luo's collection. Fatty Luo openly hung these magic treasures on the wall for display, and each magic treasure had its own spirit power protective cover. To be honest, Ling Jinren, these magic treasures are my proudest collection. Fatty Luo chuckled. I've looked for an expert from a proper department to appraise every single one of them, and they're 100% authentic. Furthermore, they've all been preserved, so if any of them are damaged, we'll get 95% of the compensation. Sheep's gaze swept around before landing on an item that resembled an armor made of beast hide. It was a flesh-colored bee skin armor that was covered in fur. There was also a helmet on the armor, and there were two huge fangs on the left and right sides of the helmet. What's this? Sheep asked as she stretched out her little finger. Have you heard of the heavenly demon pig? Fatty Luo asked. The sheep blinked and shook her head. It was actually a heavenly demon pig. Wang Ling's eyes lit up because he had read about it in historical records. The sky demon pig was the first demon king to come out of the gate between worlds when it first appeared. At that time, the sky demon pig's arrival had caused an apocalyptic flood, and the most troublesome thing was the heavenly demon pig's superbody. In its superbody state, this demon pig's defense was at its peak, and it was as tough as a demon god's. In that battle, if General E hadn't seized the opportunity when the heavenly demon pig's superbody weakened, he would have been able to kill it in one blow and stop the damage in time. The consequences would have been unthinkable. In order to get this pig's skin and tusks, I paid a huge price and went through many twists and turns. In the end, I managed to get my hands on this pig's skin. I originally wanted to use it to make a full set of robes, but unfortunately, there weren't many raw materials left, so I used it to make a set of animal skin armor. As long as you put it on and activate it with spirit energy, you'll have the super body effect for a short period of time. There are a lot of so-called authentic heavenly demon pigskin armor circulating on the market now, but they're all fake. Mine is the only one that's authentic. Fatty Luo waved his palm leaf fan as he looked at the pigskin armor he had made, his heart full of pride. I was invited to an auction once, and when I realized that someone was actually selling heavenly demon pigskin armor, I was so angry. Does he really think his fake pig armor is the best in the world? Wang Ling, everyone had their own pride and things they were proud of. Take Fatty Luo, for example. He wasn't someone who cared about his appearance because he had once been handsome. He hadn't had a moment of peerless beauty. But Fatty Luo had realized 100 years ago that good looks didn't have the slightest king used to him. Becoming an outstanding weaponsmith was the most important thing to him, and the various magic treasures he had collected over the past several hundred years were what he was most proud of. Apart from his heavenly demon pig skin armor, there were actually quite a few other items in the shop that Fatty Luo treasured. Wang Ling was surprised to find that most of Fatty Luo's collection was actually defensive equipment. In the past several hundred years, I've traveled all over the country and collected the toughest defensive equipment I could find. Fatty Luo grinned. Of course, my greatest wish is to be able to create a peerless godly sword that can easily destroy all this defensive equipment. As he said this, Fatty Luo's gaze abruptly pointed behind the door of the shop. Wang Ling and Sheep followed his gaze and immediately saw a shield hanging behind the door. It was a dark blue shield, and its surface was covered with layers of scales that were arranged in an orderly manner like fish scales. At first glance, this shield didn't look like anything new, but it actually gave off a faint aura of the deep sea, and when you sensed it carefully, you actually felt like you were drowning and suffocating. What was this? Wang Ling narrowed his eyes, and somehow felt that this thing wasn't simple. This is a shield made from the scales of the western deep-sea water spirit hog dun. Its skin is quite thick, and its defense is enhanced in places with water, such as rainy days, lakes, the sea, and so on. Fatty Luo said. It's also called Huadun for short. Chapter 254. It was June 22nd on Wednesday in the 9th week of the semester. Later, this day would be recorded in the annals of history, because it happened to be the day the Old Devil would be put on trial. The Old Devil had been arrested at a military base on the outskirts of Songhai City, along with the master of Shadow Stream, Jiang Luiwei, who had been trapped in the stone ghost mask at the time. The plan to capture the Old Devil had been discussed beforehand, so in the end, the Old Devil was directly sent to Songhai First Prison to be interrogated on the spot. In fact, since the day the Old Devil had been arrested, online news and public opinion had already been flooded with comments online. Any news about the Old Devil would have tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of comments. This was enough to show the Old Devil's social influence. This was a figure who had struck fear and awe into the hearts of the entire Huaxiao nation back then. Dubbed Devil Emperor Guapai, he had been known as the leader of the biggest evil force back then. Wang Ling had always felt that if there was a prize for the biggest dark force, the Guapai army, which the old devil had led back then, would definitely be second to none. At 6 o'clock in the morning, in the interrogation room of Songhai First Prison, the old devil was still in Jiang Liuyue's body as it sat obediently in a wooden chair. It was still wearing the spirit shackles as it faced Warden Liang, General Yi, Secretary Da Kong, and a group of senior prison officers. 8 people were sitting in a row in front of the old devil, and next to them was a live broadcast camera. In order to show how much importance the government attached to this matter, and at the same time to respond to some rumors online, General Yi's interrogation this time was open and transparent and was directly being broadcasted live. "Is everything ready?" General Yi tilted his head and asked a staff member next to him. "Everything is ready, General Yi. We'll start directly when the live broadcast host cuts in and the camera turns green." The staff member bent over and pointed at the camera in front of him as he replied softly. The host just did a warm-up before the live broadcast. Currently, it's ranked first in TV ratings, and in less than 5 minutes since the live broadcast started, there are already more than 20 million people watching the live broadcast online. Based on this trend, it's estimated that when the interrogation starts, it'll break 100 million. Hearing this, General Yi's eyes abruptly dimmed a little. He hadn't expected this devil to still be so influential after so many years. "What is General Yi thinking about?" asked the staff member when he saw General Yi's somewhat profound gaze. "It's fine." General Yi scratched his head. "It's just that the higher-ups told me that it'd be best if the viewership for this live broadcast of the trial didn't exceed that of the Spring Festival Gala. That's why the situation is a little awkward." The staff, "Then, should we begin?" General Yi looked at the old devil and took a deep breath. "Let's rehearse first." The staff, 5 minutes later, the old devil faced the camera. As soon as the staff member said, "Begin," the old devil cooperatively lowered his head and started to repent. "I was wrong. I was really wrong. I shouldn't have barged into the National Palace because of some personal issues. The destruction of people's property and life safety has a very bad impact on society." General, "Then what about the previous delivery men?" The old devil, "My venerable self is very sorry about the rice ball delivery incident, but my venerable self has kept the souls of those delivery men. Those delivery men whose souls dissipated under the sun in the news have actually been kept in the small world of my purple gold gourd." General E nodded and glanced at the question on the paper, then asked, "Can you briefly explain to the public what happened before and after you were arrested?" "Before the battle, I wanted to infiltrate the small world to absorb the vitality of those children and activate the body rotation array to revive myself. But unfortunately, the plan failed. After that, I was locked down by the 5 elements great array and couldn't escape." The old devil raised his head and stared at the camera. "In the end, I lost to General Yi's palm heart sword." General Yi held up 4 fingers. "Do you know what you did can only be described with 4 words?" Everyone around him, "Outrageous." General Yi, "For more words." Everyone around him, "You're insane." The old devil, "Now that we have concrete evidence of your crime, we'll follow the procedure and send you to the Supreme Court. Do you have anything else to say?" As soon as General Yi finished speaking, a staff member on the side suddenly called for a halt. General Yi frowned. "What's going on? What's the problem?" A female screenwriter came up to General Yi and whispered in his ear with a slightly embarrassed expression, "There's nothing wrong with the basic procedure, but there's something wrong with the way you express your emotions." After that, the female screenwriter looked at the old devil and said, starting with the line, "My venerable self was wrong. Mr. Devil Emperor should look a little more downcast. It would be best if you could express the grief of a broken family and broken-up family." The old devil, the female screenwriter, "Although it sounds a little difficult, it would be best if Mr. Devil Emperor could squeeze out a few tears. That would be better." The old devil, the female screenwriter, lowered her head and looked at the script in her hand. "There's one more thing. I hope Mr. Devil Emperor could describe in detail how General E used the palm heart sword. The script has already been written, so Mr. Devil Emperor could take a good look at it later and memorize it in 2 or 3 minutes. During the narration, you have to show fear of the palm heart sword. The old devil, General. After hearing the female screenwriter's words, even Secretary Dakong was shocked. Is that necessary? During General Yi's rehearsal, the higher-ups were also watching, and they unanimously agreed that this part needed to be strengthened. On one hand, it would reflect General Yi's strength, and, on the other hand, it would bring about positive energy in society and set an example for the vast number of cultivation students who are still learning. The female screenwriter replied, General, there's another matter that requires General E and Secretary Dakong to make a decision together, the female screenwriter said. What is it? While the host was on the field just now, the CEO of Cultivation Hardware and Concealed Weapons Technology, Evil Monarch Jun Xie, Sect Leader AI of the Five Elements Sect, and Sect Leader Su of the Exploding Sky Sect all sent congratulatory messages in the bullet screen. Secretary Dakong raised his eyebrows. Isn't that a good thing? They're all celebrities in the cultivation circle. It's very meaningful for them to spread positive energy in society. The problem is that after Sect Leader Su of Exploding Sky Sect sent his congratulatory bullet messages, he sent 3,000 yachts. After that, Sect Leader AI of Five Elements Sect didn't want to be outdone and sent 3,001 yachts in return. After that, Lord Jun Xie also followed suit. In just 3 minutes, the number of yachts exceeded 10,000. The host would like to ask, should we express our congratulations? The female screenwriter asked. Chapter 255. According to the analysis of relevant experts in the media, the live broadcast of the trial should be the first great feat in Huaxiao Nation in recent years. While the whole nation would be educated about the basic law through the live broadcast, it would also greatly intimidate those criminals in the dark and suppress the arrogance of the evil forces. That morning, Wang Ling was still gnawing on his bread when he saw the number of viewers of the live broadcast increase at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than 10 minutes after the start of the broadcast, it had already broken 100 million. Then, Wang Ling saw the server crash just like that. When he opened the live broadcast room again, a huge 404 popped up on the screen. Wang Ling, the old man, didn't know how to use a cell phone to watch a live broadcast, and when he saw that Wang Ling's page had turned into a 404, he straightaway sighed. Like I said, this high-tech stuff is sometimes unreliable. It's better to just watch the live broadcast on TV. After saying that, the old man reached out to turn on the TV with practiced ease. As expected, the live broadcast on TV was relatively stable, but there were no rows of bullet messages or the shock of a bunch of bigwigs flaunting their wealth and showering each other with gifts. In fact, there were only 3 types of people who were concerned about the live broadcast of the Old Devil's trial. The first type were mostly middle-aged and elderly people who were genuinely concerned about how the situation would develop. They were also very concerned about the Old Devil's final outcome. The second type were young people. Most of them were concerned about the social impact of this incident and the impact it would have on their future lives and jobs. According to the media, there were even some young entrepreneurs who had already registered trademarks for Old Devil and Devil Emperor Guapai, just like the blue thin mushroom incident a while ago. The third type were young people. These people were usually relatively simple-minded, and most of them only watched live broadcasts online. Furthermore, they didn't care about the incident itself. They only liked to watch the bullet messages and watch the big shots in the cultivation world who appeared in the live broadcast room and showered them with gifts. But Wang Ling didn't feel that he belonged to any of these 3 types of people. He felt that he was more of a melon citizen, or the so-called melon-eating masses. The old man crossed his legs as he watched the TV. At that moment, the live broadcast had already started to show the Old Devil's confession. He saw the Old Devil sitting in a chair, confessing his crimes with a sorrowful expression on his face. The old man looked at it for a long time, and the expression on his face turned a little complicated as he looked at Wang Ling. Lingzi, do you know something? Wang Ling lowered his head and didn't respond. Although he had been at the scene of the devil's capture, he had promised Immortal Toya and General E that he wouldn't say a word about what had happened there. The old man stared at the TV for a while. When he saw the old devil wiping his tears, he simply turned the TV off. Her tears aren't good at acting. The old man clicked his tongue. As a chef, the old man had faced countless diners and seen all kinds of expressions like the old devil's. He could tell at a glance. There's a saying, the old man rubbed his chin in thought and finally came up with a comment that was very suitable for the old devil's mood at the moment. You look like you're crying, but you're cursing in your heart. Wang Ling. Sure enough, when Wang Ling returned to school today, the topic of discussion early in the morning was all about the live broadcast of the trial. In fact, when the old devil had been arrested, all the students of the 6 schools who had been in the military training had witnessed it. But apart from Wang Ling, who had been the closest to the scene, no one had clearly seen what had happened. From the perspective of most of the students at the time, they had only seen the magnificent and massive 5 elements great array. The light from the 5 elements great array was so dazzling, like the 5 spirit pearls sealing the demon lock pagoda, that people couldn't open their eyes. By the time they reacted, the old devil had already been arrested. Even when he had been arrested, the security at the scene had been surprisingly good, and a lot of curious students had wanted to see the true face of this legendary devil emperor, but had been stopped by the instructors. All in all, there had been a lot of regrettable things during the survival contest. So during the morning's self-study period, someone recalled the specific details of that day through the live broadcast of the old devil's interrogation and felt that it was a pity. I wonder if there were any witnesses who were closer to the old devil when he was captured. I had no idea that the purpose of setting up the 5 elements great array was to capture the old devil. This was a confidential mission. Of course, we couldn't have known. Superchin also sighed. And now that I think about it, it's very likely that we weren't allowed to bring our phones during the military training to prevent us from taking pictures at the scene of the arrest. Saying this, Superchun had a mysterious look in his eyes. Actually, did you notice that a lot of mysterious things happened during the military training this time? Such as, someone asked. During the military training, Dopey, classmate Wang Ling, and I were in the same group. But at the start of the survival contest, Dopey had an upset stomach, so we were separated at the initial transmission stage. After that, I smoothly met up with classmate Wang Ling in the Small World's desert. And then? That's the weird part. Superchin frowned. I suddenly fainted halfway through. When I woke up, I found Loopy Toad, and then classmate Wang Ling suddenly disappeared. I seriously suspect that I was kidnapped by some unknown creature in the small world. Everyone, Wang Ling, the reason why Superchan felt that the survival contest this time was a little baffling was actually because of Wang Ling. Because after the contest, Wang Ling had followed Wang Ming's request and erased his memories of Wang Ming. That was why Superchin felt that his memories of the survival contest had become a little baffling. Of course, this wasn't the most frightening thing, because Wang Ling had made some mistakes when he had erased Wang Ming's memories. Although he had deleted Wang Ming's memories, there were still some details that he hadn't completely erased. He had forgotten to delete the no-show wave technique that Wang Ming had passed on to Superchun and Dopey Gua at the time. Of course, neither Superchun nor Dopey Gua had told anyone about this. At that moment, the expressions on their faces were a little crafty. After all, it was hard for normal people to understand this feeling of a sudden epiphany, like a protagonist in a novel. Mom, your son has finally had an epiphany. So at that moment, Superchin's mood was a little complicated. Apart from excitement, he was also indescribably touched. He looked at his hands in disbelief. Wang Ling saw that they were trembling slightly. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.